Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to episode 88 of the Former Action Guys podcast, and I'm your host, Justin Kramer. And this week I have back on Specialist Vittorio Dominguez. He is a U.S. Army infantryman, and if you haven't heard his other episode, he was on episode 86 as well. We get into that one, and we really break down kind of the differences between Army and Marine Corps training, and sets a really good bedrock for the rest of his story, which is, on this episode, we get into his time in Afghanistan and some of the different things that he and his unit did while they were there, be it their own operations that they were involved in that were, some of them were boring and nothing happened, and some of them were just crazy stuff that occurred. You're talking about getting hit with RPGs and mortars and all this other stuff while in firefights. Anything from that to they were QRF for like the attack on COP Keating, and he describes like the aftermath of that and in detail. And it's pretty, it's a story that needs to be told, and it's a perspective from the lowest, he's a PFC or private while he was in the Army, while he was over deployment. So having that perspective is really good to hear that. It'd be nice to, if I can get one of his officers or staff NCOs, senior leaders to come on and talk about their side of the story as well, just to kind of give more perspective and everything. But overall, really interesting conversation, and I think you're really going to enjoy it. As always, make sure to, if you're enjoying the podcast, please go over to Apple Podcasts and leave a review. At the time of this recording, I'm up to 90 straight 5-star reviews. Could always use a couple comments on there, a couple more 5-star reviews to help get the word out. Please share the episode with a friend or two and let them know. And as always, hit up my Instagram at Former Action Guys and at J Kramer Graphics. So hit me up and check out my website, jkramergraphics.com, and enjoy the episode.
There's that military training kicking in, having redundancy after redundancy after redundancy.
After having lost multiple episodes, I think a couple episodes ago I lost a video, so it was an audio only one or something like that, or I lost a video like 10 minutes in, and I was just like, it sucks, man, because I know people want to hear entire stories, and I hate it for the person that comes on the show and something happens that messes up their podcast, or it's like, because it takes away the focus of the story to like, oh shit, it got cut off again. Oh shit, they're breaking up a little bit. I could barely hear them, and it's just an ongoing thing, but I appreciate you coming back and going through this again. Yeah, man.
Thank you. It is.
So welcome back to the podcast. I know we talked there for a little bit about video games and stuff like that. I think, a lot of people can relate. Gaming's becoming I think people are starting to realize how big gaming's becoming, and high schools they're starting, it seems like, with intramural gaming teams and stuff like that. I'm sure there's school systems out there that have like legitimate, varsity teams or whatever, but I know there's a lot of schools that do intramural like gaming and things like that. And I don't know, it was always a big thing for guys in the military. I remember being on ship on the Mew, and guys would bring those suitcase like Xbox things that had like the TV and Xbox all built in, and they would put that in their little coffin rack on. There's like no room for anything on ship, but they would bring one of those so that they could play video games while we're underway and stuff. So it's definitely something to hear,
It's well, I started on Xbox, and I was doing the Battlefield 3 thing, and I found a community that was more military centric, and that they did a lot more of their call outs, like it was a Marine Corps milsim group. Sorry to use that word for everybody, but that's what it was. It was a bunch of prior service dudes, Marines, and Air Force guys that were just doing their thing on it. And it slowly progressed into me wanting more and something that was, more realistic. And I got into the Arma 3 scene. And I actually hit up Ski, the Mike, the gentleman that you had on, the Marsoc dude. And I hit him up because I saw that he had a pretty decent rig. And plays Arma 3 too. It's one of those things that it gets you back into it. It puts you in with the fellas,
really?
Puts you in a scenario where, it's not life or death, but it is 3D life or death, and it gets realistic. Like that soft lamb that you saw, I sent you a picture of. You have one of those in game, and you have to organize it with a pilot that's also flying in game, and it's. That's just one of the minuscule parts of it, but you can do the whole interaction of super realism when it comes to it.
Like I said before, cool. It kind of makes me wonder at what point it's going to become too realistic and burdensome for people to want to play it. They're going to be like, man, I don't want to fucking set up the soft lamb. I don't want to, I don't want to have to like put in the right PRF code. And
well, that's the reason you get mods that expedite that. It makes it a little bit. Plus, if you're using A10s, a lot of them are the Mark 82 dumbfires.
Yeah, see, I've never really been into online or like PC gaming and stuff like that, like computer gaming. I've always been a console guy, and I really just I find what I like and I stick with it. And it's really lately just been Call of Duty. I've just been playing Warzone like crazy. I've had I got the new one, the Cold War just came out. And I've only played it a handful of times, man. I keep coming back to Warzone, because I just like jumping into that and playing. I got a good group of guys. I can hit them up, and we'll all jump on. And for me, I'm in San Diego. My entire family, all my friends from high school and stuff like that, all live in Indiana. The only person out here that I'm related to is my kid. My ex is out here obviously too, so I have my kid, and then I have a few people I hang out with out here. But that gives me an ability to like still talk to the guys I used to play games with in high school. We all used to play Halo together, and when it used to be quad screens before we were playing online and stuff like that. And yeah, so it's cool like that. I keep in touch with them. So it's more than just me playing a game. It's like, hey, we're bullshitting. How's things back home? How's so and so? What have you been up to? Kind of deal. And I think that's one thing that people that don't play video games don't really understand about it, is that it's not just a game. It's like a community kind of thing, and it's like a way for you to interact with other people.
The camaraderie that comes with it, and people trying to push you, especially when it gets to a point. In Escape from Tarkov, it's not a game where you die and you come back with a kit. You die in game and you've lost everything.
Oh, really?
So if you've got the cool quad night vision, you've got a 416 that's got a PEQ 14 on it, and a flashlight and all this other bullshit on you, you get smoked, it's gone. And you and it pushes people to, when you're in a team, to either be really greedy and to grab up your shit when you die, or to, if they're friends, to help you out and push you in the right direction and be a little bit more tactical and aware of the situation.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting, man. That's people get into that, and it's like, is it one of those games where you can build up your profile and then turn around and sell it online for like a crazy amount? Because I know people were doing that with like World of Warcraft and stuff like that.
I'm pretty sure you can, but it is very frowned upon, and if even a hint of it gets pulled out, the makers of the game will ban the shit out of you, your IP, and any IP within like a 3-mile radius of your house. They're pretty extreme with it. I wanted to segue into something that I wanted to bring up at the beginning of it, at the beginning of all of this. I served 12 months in Afghanistan, and I did not go to the Korangal Valley.
Yeah, So in what he's talking about, for those that are listening, the intro for the last episode is when I said that. I think I said 15 months too, right? For your deployment. And I think what happened was, what I normally do for the podcast is, as soon as we finish, as soon as you're off the line, I don't take anything down. I roll right into my intro. And sometimes I have notes taken and stuff like that where, that I use. And sometimes I just go off the cuff. And I think at the end of the last episode, we were talking about the Korangal Valley and people getting extended over there. And I think that's why that was on my brain. So I appreciate you. I'm all about people fact-checking, the things that come out of this podcast.
Yeah. I should have made it more prevalent.
No, it's totally my fault.
I just wanted to say that.
So yeah, man, for those that didn't, check out the last episode, go back, and I really appreciated that one, because I've always wanted to have, an Army guy or somebody come on and talk to us, especially an infantry guy, and talk about like your training specifically, because I've obviously had a almost solely Marine Corps guest list, and I think we've kind of got an idea of how that rolls. So it's interesting to hear the other side, because I'm sure, like in the Army, the Marines are interested in what the Army's doing. I'm sure you guys are interested in what the Marine training is like. I wonder what they're actually doing over there, So it's cool to get a different perspective on that stuff. And for those that, like I said, that haven't checked it out, go back and check that out. You will hear we break down different types of training between the Army and the Marine Corps, and then we talk about basically your career up to before deploying, like getting ready to deploy and stuff like that. So I guess we could just jump back in there, and if you want to start with, because again, I don't know if movements are different for the Army. I'd like to start with, what was your guys' final training exercise? Like, what was the last thing that you did, and it was like, all right, this is it, and then we're good to go, and we're going to head overseas?
So we worked up to that point, actually. Like, we were right on the precipice of getting to it. We did the Fort Campbell thing, snowed, everybody hated fucking life, vehicle, quote-unquote, got blown up, did a 10-mile march, did our squad lanes, fat medic, the whole situation. And then we stayed in Fort Drum, I want to say another month after that. So this is like March, January, March, April-ish. And we stayed either April or May and then shipped out June, possibly the end of June, end of July to JRTC
Yep.
at Fort Polk, Louisiana. Yeah, great. It was great. It was amazing. I loved it. It was a good time. It it definitely, I don't know. It was supposed to simulate a super realistic deployment, and we were still at this time under the belief that we were going to Iraq. So it was really around a lot of coin stuff, a lot of near engagement, a lot of urban environment type stuff. And we got to Louisiana during the day. We we got there during the night. We got there during the evening, and they pushed us onto not cattle trucks, but like cattle buses. You could tell that they were used for training events because they were all fucked up and had dirt everywhere. And they put us on these buses, and take us from the Fort Polk airfield directly into the box. Like you can see civilization. We're all under the expectation that we're going to get, not a hotel, but maybe be in some barracks, maybe get some poke bait, you know, at least have a second to climatize a little bit. It was like, nope, you're going straight into the box. They shipped us right into the middle of it with these three buildings. They were man-made structures, obviously, but they had tin roofs, tin walls, and inside of them had a fuck ton of cots. And then you had another building that was considered the chow hall, which I can honestly say I don't think the whole time I was there I actually ate, or was a chow tent, and they had a line and you had to eat back at the barracks. It was weird. It was supposed to be a deployment, and in supposed to be a deployment style, they obviously had shower trailers that only had about like that much space that you could fit in, and you saw everybody's ass, and it was just a whole situation. And they only had one. They only brought one for some reason. So females had between like 9 a.m. and 10 a.m. and then dudes had the rest of the time. It was weird. It was a whole situation. But they put us inside these barracks, and we do our red one up where we check all our equipment and make sure everybody's got everything they need. And they tell us that we're in the box and this is where we're living now. And the next morning they tell us that we need to go to motor pool checkout or vehicle checkout. It wasn't a motor pool. It was just a big ass lot, like where they bring in new car type situation, except with Humvees and LMTVs and all the vehicles that we would need for this training operation. And for the first 2 days, I want to say, was us getting the vehicles. And then a day after that, we had just learned that we were going to get new 1151s, the super up armored Humvees, and we had to do vehicle training on that. Side note, I inadvertently did all this training in the hopes that it would possibly progress my career or get me out of weapon squad into a line fire team, because weapon squad at this point, I'd just been rear security. I did movements with them and all that, but I was just rear security because I was javelin gunner. I didn't have a javelin, so it was just like, you're the rear guy. You're the one covering our ass. And I really wanted to get more fire team experience. Maybe I was willing to go as a saw gunner or a grenadier or whatever, but they kept me a weapon squad, and I inadvertently volunteered to do all this driving, which in turn, during the beginning of my deployment, I was primarily a driver for my platoon leader. So it sort of all boiled down to that. But I do all this driver training. A couple things happened during that period of time that we were in JROTC. We get the vehicles and we start doing our training. And I remember the first night we had a platoon leader. I'm not going to say his name. He was a butter bar, and then he got his second lieutenant right before we went to JRTC. And we all go on this little, I don't know, it wasn't a training mission as much as it was to associate ourselves with the terrain and everything that was going on, and just drive the vehicles around on austere terrain, get them stuck a little bit, and figure out what was going on with them, because we'd never really driven Humvees because we were considered light infantry. And prior to JRTC, we had driven a Humvee we got MRAPs to train on. So it was weird. It was I don't understand the logic behind it, because we had done MRAP training, but we were going back to Humvees. But I digress. So we go out to do this association with the terrain, and they put us in these little huts. And they're little shacks, little shacks, and all of our companies there with 3 platoons, and the shacks aren't going to hold everybody. It's just one of those things that's not going to happen. They're not. It's not possible. You can't hold an entire platoon in these little shit shacks. So we all decide that we're going to fucking go to sleep on the vehicles or inside the vehicles, which if you've ever had the opportunity to sleep on the hood of a Humvee or in the gunner's turret with the fucking rack down, I would recommend never doing that. And you're just ensuring that later on in life you're going to have back problems.
I don't know, man. The hood's a choice spot.
We had a dude that thought, because they were soft shell, we only had one 1151 for every platoon, and someone got the idea that they were going to sleep on we had the turtleback ones that have like the big shell, and then you have the driver and passenger that are covered, and he thought he was going to sleep on that, and in the middle of the night you just hear fuck, and we look over and the dude fucking had broken the entire top part. Now this gets better because he breaks it, gets up and lays down, and everybody else is like, well, and we go back to sleep, and then we just hear woo woo, and it turns into a monsoon. Like, I swear to God, it was fucking crazy. I have never heard rain like that in my entire life. It's just going, and everybody's like, where are we gonna go? We go inside the little shit shack building, and the immediate reaction to the guy that broke the top of his Humvee is like, fuck, it's going to be drenched in there by tomorrow morning because I had broken the roof. And we're sitting there inside this building all just waiting for the fucking rain to stop. And then you hear in one of the other shit shacks with one of the other platoons, it's a snake! It's a snake! Get the fuck out of here! It's a snake! And you see everybody run out and flashlights turn on and light discipline goes out the fucking window and everybody's freaking out because they saw a black snake. And then you hear the hillbilly in their back, it's just a black snake, leave it alone, it's not going to hurt you. They go back into their building, we go back into our building, and that was our terrain association before we went out on our lanes. The lanes, I think it was 5 days, maybe a week, full week, but it was just, this is your deployment. So you go to I don't know, like it was everything that I had heard about deployments and stuff like that. This did not live up to my expectations, because you go to the FOB, you're hot, you're sweaty, there's no air conditioning, you load up in your vehicles. We did a EOD simulation, so we just sat there for like 5 hours waiting for EOD to show up because they had 4 other IEDs they had to deal with. They came, dealt with our IED, said it wasn't anything but a fucking paper bag. I ended up getting the 1151 stuck since I was the platoon leader's driver, and the platoon leader needed to be in the up armored vehicle. I get it stuck, we get it unstuck, and it's just a week of like that. And then at the end, like near the end of it, because it goes, you do your it goes in rotations. You do your patrol, and then you do like a town holding, like you're holding your position there, and then it culminates into Shugart Gordon, which I'm not sure if you know. Shugart Gordon is a huge mount town that has sewers that you can go in and rooftops and big ass buildings, and everything is inhabitable. It's like a small city, but you're supposed to assault it with a company size element, or I think SF does their training. Everybody does some sort of training there. But before that, we get this town dictated to us as our, I don't know, it was a place that we were supposed to conduct key leader engagements and coin operations, but at the same time we had a mosque that we were living in. Mosque. So we go there, and this was my first like really fun, shitty situation, because we were out there, we were alone, so we didn't really have the amenities of the FOB, but we also didn't have leadership down our ass. Like we could sort of fuck off a little bit in the sense of standards as far as not wearing your Kevlar when you're walking around outside. Obviously, you left the wire, you put your shit on, but when you're inside, command expected us to wear everything all the time, knee pads included. But they weren't there, so we're doing our thing, pulling security and stuff. And then I remember that night, it was like, again, this is 4 days before the assault on Shugart Gordon, and the night we had to pull 25% security. And people that don't know what that is if you have a platoon of 30 people or 60 people, 15 of them would be on security while the other 45 are asleep, and then it would just rotate from there on. Well, with our platoon being 34, those numbers get smaller. Every vehicle had to be manned. We had 5 vehicles, and it was meant to break us. All throughout all of this, we have dudes that are attached to us that are our the lane. I don't know. They're the dudes that are ensuring that we're doing the right thing and we're not fucking up. Yeah, something to that effect. We had 3 of them. They were all Ranger certified, and they were making sure that we were doing what we were supposed to. And when the platoon leader said something, he'd go up to them, "Sir, you sure you want to do that?" Blah 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 type situation. But throughout all this, we've got these dudes walking around us, and 4 days before Sugar Gordon, night hits. Everybody is really craving some sleep, and about 1 o'clock hits, and you hear contact. And you hear someone say, "What? I got dudes in front of me. They're about 25 meters." And mind you, everybody was dead asleep, and you could feel the entire room wake up. Like everybody you could hear guns getting grabbed. You could hear people like breathing a little bit quieter. You could hear someone trying to like charge their weapon, and you could hear all of this. And then you just start hearing the 240s going off on the perimeter security. Now, mind you, we'll go with a circle type thing. And you had an outer wall, and you had the Humvees on the outer wall, and one of the 240 starts going off, and then we had a 50 cal that had simunitions. Like, I don't know how that works, but they were like plastic rounds that would actually impact targets, and they were meant to use them on these. Yeah, it was weird. But the 50 cal starts going off, and the ammo, the linkage kept jamming up in the gun, so it turned into a single shot charge. But the 240s are going off, and then my platoon leader grabs me. He says, "Dom, grab I think it was LeBrake, the RTO. He was a private at the time, or PFC. So grab LeBrake, and the FOs were assaulting to the other side of the town. So I go grab them. We link up, and they're like, "All right, we got to get to the other side of town so that we can try to break their momentum." So as we're assaulting through the town, you start seeing muzzle flashes to your left, and we start engaging. And this is the time where I was just like, this is one of my moments in training that I was like, yeah, I'm fucking shit up. We're just sitting there shooting. And the dude with the saw, these are all blanks, so it sounds like fucking cap guns, right? But the saw, I just remember this dude fucking like Ramboing it, coming down on a knee and just fucking da 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 da, like it was going out of fucking style. And so we make it to the end of town, and RFO starts radioing in for our artillery, and I guess they could hear our comms, or the dudes that were watching the enemy side of things could hear our comms, because he calls it in. They say shot out, and then they splash, and then when you hear splash, you could see in the distance the dudes that were screening us pull simunitions, the sim artillery rounds, and start lobbing them around enemy positions. So that was pretty cool.
Those are loud as fuck too.
Yeah, it was the middle of fucking night too, and you hear this going on, and then I'm not sure if we had Apaches on station or if the A-10s were up. No, those only came on during the day to try to prevent fratricide during training. But this is going on, and we peel off, head back, and then it turns into another 3 days of waiting around. And that's it. That was the end of the training. We get back on the plane, head back to New York.
JRTC, man.
It was an interesting training event. Sugar Gordon, I was a driver, so I didn't participate in it. So
I did a JRTC with the 501st or whatever out of Canada, or not Canada, out of Alaska, excuse me. My Anglico team got attached to them. And there was a British unit out there as well. I personally was attached to the British unit and did some of the lane training with them. I didn't make it into the box. They were doing like a full on exercise, like a whole month or something like that. And I did like the first 2 weeks or something like that. The other training up into that final exercise in the box deal. And I left. I only left early because I got orders to a different unit. That's when I left Anglico and went to the MU. But what a shitty place. Like going there, we were in those weird buildings. They had like the tarps for sides. It was like a metal overhang, but it had tarps for sides, and it was completely packed with cots. And it was crazy how many people we had shoved into one of those. And we were with my Anglo team was in a tent with all Brits. So, which was cool because we were trading stuff with them. You know, we're like, hey, I'll give you a hoodie for one of your hoodie. You know, that's the cool part about doing stuff like that is when you get to meet guys like that and do stuff. But yeah, man, JRTC is pretty in depth. It's, I mean, Marine Corps comparison would be going out to 29 Palms and doing Mojave Viper. But not to the same level because JRTC does all the laser, you know, where if you're hit, like it can tell you that you're hit because you have all the sensors and shit that you're wearing and stuff like that. So,
let me go back to that. When you get hit, to get training for medevacs, obviously they call in an actual Blackhawk and have an LZ marked out already and all that. And they call it in and you go onto the Blackhawk, and then depending on the wound, you're dead for 6, 12 to 24 hours. And you just sit inside a fucking tent for that period of time and then get put back to your unit if you're considered a casualty. That sucked. That was something that I, like, the moment I heard anybody's thing go off, I immediately checked myself. I was like, fuck, no.
I heard it's miserable too. Like, it's a tent with nothing in it. It's freezing ass cold. Like, you're just sitting there being miserable for like however long you're in the box or whatever, you're, you know, taken out. Yeah.
You're dead.
So, having gone to Afghanistan, how well do you think that training prepared you for, you know, like an actual deployment?
It prepared me for the waiting, for the coin operations, and for the key leader engagements that we took place in. Again, the beginning of my deployment was quiet, and it was really weird because I drove a lot, and we did a couple foot patrols. Or maybe it wasn't weird. Maybe it's the norm because summer, obviously, things kicked off and it turned into fucking everybody's trying to kill everybody all the time forever. But it prepared me for just being bored, man. The monotony of it, waiting for EOD, sitting around, letting your fucking PL talk to people, being jealous that they're having actual conversations with the populace and sharing footbread and stuff like that. But other than that, it did not prepare us for the way combat was going to be in Afghanistan because, like you said, you were down south and it was a lot more flat terrain. Where we were at, it was one of those things where, and I'm going to pull out my rifle, where normal engagements were like this, where in Afghanistan it was like, let me get that arc. Yep, plunging fire. Now I'm engaging targets at an extended range on the other side of a fucking mountaintop. I don't think there's any way to train for that unless you're like in Colorado or something doing actual training in the Rockies for combat, because it was a new experience when we did get there.
Did you find the engagements to be difficult, or did you find like the movement around the terrain to be more difficult? Yeah. Terrain always dictated your movement because you could have dudes above you engaging you straight down, and terrain dictated that the avenues of approach wouldn't permit you to go directly into, you know, harm's way, and possibly what the Ranger Handbook states is use frags, push forward, and eliminate the enemy. You would have to find a way around, find a saddle up, get to the top, try to maneuver on them, which you already knew they would have a PKM watching the one way that you could come up. They weren't the greatest fighters, but they did plan ahead. So if you had a dude with an AK engaging you down low, you could ensure that the one way that you could get up was going to be targeted by something with a heavy casualty rate that would be able to engage a large. Yeah, that's something I always wondered. You know, it just had to have been crazy to be fighting in the mountains. You know, because like I said, you know, like we talked about, being in Helmand, there's hills and, you know, stuff like that. There's terrain, but for the most part, it's, you know, it's farmland and it's open fields and stuff like that. And I always saw the videos from the Army guys up in the mountains, and I'm like, man, that is just a completely different war. Like, no, I don't think the tactics that we use here or we've learned over time here in Helmand would apply to these other places at all because of that terrain. And you know, like you said, they're not the best fighters, but those dudes have been using the same ambush position since they were fighting the Russians. You know, it's like these are historic like positions. It's like, hey, this has been working for 30 years. Let's keep using this spot to fucking ambush convoys coming down this super narrow lane, you know? And then the other thing I always thought was crazy is how the Army would put these patrol bases at the base of hills and stuff like that where they could be fired down into. And it was like, I don't know. I don't know. It's just one of those weird things. I'm like, who made that decision? That seems like a horrible, I mean, I'm sure everyone has heard of or seen Outpost by now. And, just having that base at the bottom of a hill where everyone can be above you and shoot down on you just seems crazy, So I don't know. So let's talk about your deployment. You guys moved through Manas, right? That's also. Yeah.
Yeah, through Manus. Okay. So before the deployment, there was a little bit of training. It wasn't too crazy. The training schedule always came up though that you had something to do that week. We did do a little more driver's training, but Christmas was spent at Fort Drum with my ex-wife and her mom. She left, and then we shipped out January 15th. January 15th, I remember kissing my ex-wife goodbye, leaving her my beautiful truck that I miss so much, and heading in, and then us waiting for the plane. And it was like every trip to Fort Campbell and JRTC, we had our rifles. I don't think we did. We had our armor and our rucksacks, and then we had our assault packs, and then if you had a laptop, obviously you had that in your hand, but everything was stacked on our backs. And then of course they had the working parties where I need 5 guys, and they turned into the ones stowing all your shit into the back of the plane. But we flew from Fort Drum, New York to Greenland. And then from Greenland, I want to say we stopped in Ireland for some reason. No, we stopped in Ramstein. And then from Ramstein, we went to Manus, which Manus was an interesting place.
It is a weird place, right? Like flying in, for those that haven't been, like Manus, Kyrgyzstan was like the hub for movement into Afghanistan for a while. And it's like a permanent air station. I don't know if it's permanent, but there was Air Force people that was their deployment. And they were there to just basically filter people into Afghanistan to the places, align the flights and stuff like that. And I remember flying in there, and it's just seeing a former like Soviet bloc country, and it's all of its beauty, I guess, with like the weird. I don't know. It just looks very like cold, and I don't know. The buildings were all different. To me, it was just weird. It was like it felt communist. You know what I'm saying? It felt like
it felt communist as fuck. And then you see there's I don't know what country was it? Tajikistan?
I don't never went through there.
Was it? No.
Oh, Kyrgyzstan.
Manus. What country is Manus in? Kyrgyzstan. The Kyrgyzstani soldiers that are fucking walking around with their Cold War Ushankas and their AKs on the outer perimeter. It's like,
yeah, and the airport is like, it looks like an abandoned airport, but it's like their international airport. And it's also, I think, a space launch place. I think they do launch of like space rockets and shit from there too. It's funny. I was talking to the stewardess. So for people that have never deployed overseas or anything like that, what happens is they sometimes, this isn't always, they'll charter a commercial flight. So the entire plane is just military people. And you have stewardesses and shit. It's super weird. You're not allowed to carry a knife on the plane, but you have your rifle underneath your seat, stuff like that. And the stewardesses were talking about, because, when you get to Manus, it's in a compound. It's like secured. There's like the HESCO walls and barbed wire and armed guards and all that stuff. So it makes you kind of feel like there's a lot of danger out in the countryside. The stewardesses were talking about how they go out to the city there and buy a bunch of alcohol and party and stuff, and then they fly back with it. And I'm like, damn, why can't we get that option? Like, like that's not cool.
I'm not sure if the Marines that went through there were able to, but I know the Air Force guys had a 2-drink limit at their local bar in Manus.
They would let us on camp until something happened. Sometimes they wouldn't let the Marines. There was one time I came through there, and it was Marines were the only ones that weren't allowed to drink. I was like, this is bullshit. And then one time we went through, and I think it was one of our guys went to the bar, had his 2 beers, the something nines. What were those called? The nines. That was what everyone got because they had the most alcohol, and you can only have 2 of them. And one of the Marines got caught banging some Air Force chick on the fucking basketball court, like in the middle of the basketball court or something like that. And then they stopped the drinking again. But what are you gonna do? And then from there, you fly into whatever your main hub. So did you guys, for the Marines, a lot of times, most of the time, you fly into Leatherneck or Bastion Air Base, which is in Helmand, and sometimes we'll fly into Dwyer. I think on my first time in Afghanistan, we flew into Dwyer. Where do you guys fly into?
So from Manus, the biggest culture shock to me, or as that we're going into a combat zone, was we transitioned from the civilian plane, bedded down for a day or two, and then got put on a
Mm-hmm.
B-17, the big sumbitch, um, and we had to wear full kit. We had to have our rifles ready to go. We didn't have any ammo though, but we had to be ready to fight if something were to happen to the plane on the way in, because they said they have taken contact years prior, but not recently, but you have to be prepared. So we put on all our kit. We have our rucksack stowed in the center. That's the part that always fucking is mind boggling, is that you have all these bags and no one has the bags in front of them, but you have all these bags that are here and stowed away, and then they get put out, and then everybody finds their bags and carries their bags again. I don't know. So we get to Bagram Air Force Base. We land into Bagram at about like 9 in the morning. They give us our in brief where this is where you can be, this is where you can't be. Our platoon leader and platoon sergeant are there with us. They tell us this is the tent you're going to stay in. So we go to the tent. Platoon leader and platoon sergeant say, we don't know what's going on. Hang tight. So we're sitting in the tent for a couple of hours, just talking shit and smoking and joking. And then they come back and they say, all right, we got a brief. Everybody needs to go to the battalion area, but it was a Connex with a building next to it, and our battalion was staged there, and we had to go there and do something. I don't remember what it was, but we went there, and on the way there, like, you got to think, you're going to a third world country that's still living during biblical times on everything that you see. The dudes that you're fighting are wearing fucking flip-flops and using AKs and chest racks that are third rate, and you roll up to this motherfucker and you see a chow hall that has a dude up front that's checking IDs, and you go inside this. If you don't have your fucking ID, you can't eat. You go inside and you look around, and it's like cheese waterfall, chocolate waterfall, fucking fried foods as far as the fucking eye could see. An omelet station that's open 24 hours, run by an Indian dude that'll make you a 30 egg omelet.
Those dudes can put some food together, man.
Anything and everything you want it. You're goddamn right they can. And they so that's on the way to the battalion area. We see this. We walk in, and we weren't even hungry. We had just eaten before we had landed, but it was like, fuck it. We made our rounds. Everybody grabbed something to eat, and we get to the battalion area, then get yelled at because we're not supposed to be eating and walking.
That's an army thing too, huh?
It was funny. It's an everywhere thing. I think you're not supposed to do anything in walking. I don't understand how they expect us to fight wars. But we get there, they give us our info, our platoon leader, they issue us a bunch of shit there. Before all of this, before we left, that's what I wanted to talk about. Did you guys have CIF where you get your initial issue? Did you get another initial issue before you deployed? Like the fracs, the flame retardant uniforms.
Yeah, so we call it CIF. It's called the combined individual or combined issue facility, for those that don't know. And that's where you go and get like your helmet, your sleeping bag, your freaking e-tool, like all your gear. That's where you go to get it. And then what happens for Marines, it's like, hey, you guys are going on this deployment, and during your workup they go, okay, hey, there's a new gear issue out, like if there's something new that came out or something like that, they take everyone to CIF one more time, and then you get updated gear, or there's stuff that they'll give you specifically for deployments. I know for a while you would get an IFAC, your individual first aid kit, right when you check in. And then I think they realize they're wasting like thousands and thousands of like first aid kits that are never getting used, and they expire, so they just throw them away. So now they started issuing you an IFAC without actually any first aid shit in it. And then so it's like, okay, now you're deploying. Here's all your first aid kit. Here's some extra tourniquets, and stuff like that.
You asked me, so that combined with, you asked me before if we did any sort of medical training. We did. It was Spartan First Responder. Our battalion, our division, no, not division, battalion, brigade. Our brigade were the Spartans, so they had a Spartan First Responder class where we did all the medical stuff. And we actually got to use the nasal phalangeal oil thing. I got stabbed by a fucking medic that didn't know how to do a fucking IV, so he's in there probing for a fucking vein. Nice. But we did that. And then after that, we did the initial issue for our deployment, where we got the super almighty IOTV that everybody hates and is like wearing a bomb-proof suit whenever you get it. So 2009 was the deployment, so 2008 is when we
Yeah,
got
they
issued
had
it.
huge, because that. So again, for those that may not know, during that time frame, what they saw was this was when the IED threat became even more. The beginning of the invasion of Iraq and stuff, there were IEDs, but it wasn't really a big concern. As that war went on, IEDs became more prevalent. It became the weapon of choice by insurgents. So what did we do? We started making bigger, bulkier armor because I think a lot of units found out they were mostly in convoys. A lot of these units were in convoys driving around, and if you're going to get blown up, you might as well have bigger armor, and you're not out on foot as much. So we got the same shit. We called it the turtle shell because it was so big and bulky you could barely move around in it. And then in 2011 is when I first got a plate carrier, and then we had both. For a little while they had both, and they could say like, "Well, we're going on this kind of mission. Take this one." But when we deployed, when I went to Afghanistan, we only had plate carriers, if I remember right.
They straight up just said no. Here's what you're getting. Here's the IOTV. Give us your IBAs back. We know that it's lighter and more comfortable for humping mountains, but everybody's going to get blown up by IEDs at some point in their military career. So here's your IOTV, which I can say for a fact that we only hit two. I think we hit two IEDs, and we found one IED. So a total of 3 IEDs for the 3 million that they were planning for us to fucking hit.
Yeah, good thing you carried that big ass.
It was a good time.
Even with the plate carrier, I mean, if you've never worn one, my plate carrier, because I'm a bigger dude, I had the large or whatever, and I had the large sappy plates. My plate carrier, without any ammo or anything else on it, just the plates and the plate carrier itself was almost 30 pounds. I think it was like 28 pounds, without ammo and shit attached to it. And it's like, that shit adds up. And then you guys are going to take all that weight and go start hiking up and down mountains, like that just sounds miserable, to be honest. When you guys got to Bagram, did you guys do like a BZO? Did you zero your weapons and stuff like that?
No, we did that before we deployed. Technically, so we get to Bagram, we do all this fucking receiving stuff, and the reason I brought up the initial issue is because the battalion started issuing us those sweet the t-shirt down low but uniform up top type situation going on. I forgot what they were called, the new shirts,
the flame retardant ones you were talking
shirts.
about.
No, not the flame. We got the flame retardant stuff for the initial issue, but in country they had given us the Mastiff. I cannot remember what they are, but it's the t-shirt, and then you have camouflaged arms. If that makes sense. The one you guys had zippers on yours.
Yeah, that was our flame retardant. We called those. That was our frog gear.
Okay, so we get those from the battalion at the beginning of the deployment, and it from there we get told that we're going, what FOB we're going to, and what we already had a general idea that we were going to the Kunar province, which is the furthest east, but we didn't know where we were staying. So the way it worked out was our battalion HQ got put on FOB Joyce. So because of that, higher headquarters company had to go with them. So by default, the scout platoon went with them. Now, scouts in the Army are, I want to say, a lot different than recon in the Marines, but it's the same situation where they're a higher trained and they have a specific set of skills to conduct their operations. Our scouts generally consisted of snipers and just dudes that had completed more training than everybody, such as Ranger School, Sapper School. It had all of those people that are more senior and seasoned that were able to do a job on a smaller scale than a platoon-sized element. Because they had a platoon worth of people, but their squads worked individually in different areas of our sector. So by default, they get put with a battalion. Which, if anybody's been in the military or on a specialized team and you get put with your battalion, it turns into a shit show real fast, because you're used to being able to have the capability of doing your own fucking thing, but now you've got your sergeant major and your CO sitting there ready to bust ass because you're not wearing the proper pouch on the left side type situation. And so they get put there, and it was a toss-up. I don't know how it was chosen, Um, but our sister platoons, first and second platoon, get put out in a district center because they're going to be the startup for a new COP,
Mm-hmm.
a combat outpost. And we got put on Fob Joyce for whatever reason. And it was like two different worlds, sort of like how I was expecting Afghanistan to be a third world country. Well, our two sister platoons get put into a spot where they have no cover, they have a district center, and they're waiting for this combat outpost to be built. And we get put, and anybody that hears this that was with me on that deployment, we get put in Disneyland. We have a chow hall, we have an MWR, we have the ability to use any of them whenever we need to. We're conducting patrols at the beginning from the morning. In the morning we wake up, do PT, we go do a patrol, we come back, we're in time for chow. And that's just the way it worked out. We got lucky with that whole situation, but then again, we still had the BC and Sergeant Major sitting there ready to fuck us up if we did anything wrong or they heard anything wrong. There are a lot of rules on Fob Choice, like you couldn't speed, you had to always have a ground guide at all times, no matter what you were doing. If you didn't have a ground, if you jumped in the vehicle, turned on the vehicle, and you just needed to move it like 3 feet in front of you, if someone blabbed to the sergeant major that had happened, you would be reprimanded for it. It was one of those things. But we get to Fob Joyce, the sister platoons go do their thing. We're on our own. We didn't have our company to advise us as far as what our operational tempo was going to be. So our platoon leader pushed out, and this is from my understanding, again, lowly private PFC, still doesn't know what he signed up for. Our platoon leader, I'd say, got like 3 hours of sleep, 2 hours of sleep a night, because he'd get up with us, conduct a patrol, and then he had to do his whatever platoon leaders do, and then he'd come back at like 2 to 3 in the morning and get to sleep, and then we'd start over again. I don't know what he was doing. I just know that the dude didn't get very much sleep. So now we're shifting into more of the deployment stuff. Um, so the beginning was a lot of patrols. They told us that we had to establish an OP Tangu, overlooking a town called Tangu. It was a spot that had a little structure on top, a little block structure that wasn't completed, and around the back it had a cave. Like it wasn't a big cave like you would expect. It was, I'm 6'3" and I had to crouch down to get inside of it, but I could sleep in there comfortably. Like it was long enough that you could fit 3 or 4 people inside of there, but tall enough that you couldn't. And in order to clear it, we had the one Vietnamese dude that was short enough to get inside there with a M9 and a flashlight, go in there and clear it out.
That's funny.
It turned into a tunnel rat situation real quick. But he went in there, wasn't very big. He came out, he said, "Holy fuck, dude, it's done." And so, have you ever built an OP?
No, I have not.
It might be okay when you have dirt everywhere, but when you're on top of a mountain, it turns into picks and shovels real quick. And I didn't know the proper way to put a sandbag wasn't long ways to try to get most area. It was to put it long ways facing you so that you had the entire length of the sandbag to stop a bullet. So that immediately turned into, instead of a layer of sandbags, now you have to turn them, and it turned into 50 million more sandbags, because now instead of a space this big, you have a space this big to block you. So that was fun, digging into the side of a mountain, filling sandbags day and night. We'd start at 7 or whenever the sun came up until about midday, and then we'd stop. And then near the end of the day, about 4 or 5, when it started cooling down again, we'd start working again. And throughout all this, it was just our platoon at first, and we only had one dude on security. We had to hump 50 cal up there. So the initial movement up there was in the middle of the night, and I'll never forget this. We dismount, and this is the first time that I'm not in a vehicle. I have to go up with a platoon leader and weapons squad. I had a javelin, and I had to go up there to make sure that I could use it. If
finally had a real
anything.
javelin.
So of course, oh, I forgot to say that part. I got given my clue in country and one javelin round, and then the other javelin round got passed around like a hooker to every squad, every patrol, because I had to have someone carry another round because there was no AG for me, so everybody else had to fucking, it got passed around, and I think that's the one that fucked up. But we'll get to that. So I get out of the back of this truck. I have my rucksack, a javelin, the clue inside, batteries, water, extra ammunition, food, one of the smaller sleeping systems. Since it was hotter, I didn't need the large one, and I think I even had my sleeping pad at the time. So I have all this. We get out of the truck. I've got my M4, and then as I'm leaving the truck, the platoon sergeant turns around and says, "Hey Dom, grab a case of mortars. They forgot to take them up." I fucking forgot to take them up. Yeah, I'm sure they forgot to take them up. So I grab a case of mortars, and a dude that left with me grabs a case of mortars. And mind you, I want to say our platoon was 40-man size, right? So they split it up in half, and half of the platoon was up top on top of the hill, or 15, and then 5 of us, which was the fire team that was left, had to make the trip up without any sort of organization. And these weren't very, very high hills. Like, these were the peaks. These were the 2 peaks. And it was only like a 400 meter hump from the dismount point up to the hill. But that 400 meters went up pretty quickly. So the guy leading us, I'll never forget this dude. Later on in the deployment, he was sleeping in that little fucking house, and a rock fell off the side of it and crushed him in his sleep. Crushed his fucking face and crushed his ocular cavity, and he had to be extracted.
Shit.
And that was the end of the deployment for him. But I always think back, and this is, knock on wood, like, that's what you get, you son of a bitch, is he leads us in this convoluted path up this mountain that looks like a rock from space because it's black but shiny and jagged as fuck, and we're sitting there I'm going with a fucking mortar can along with my M4 with this fucking javelin that's trying to pull me backwards and sideways, and we get over it. And you had a mountaintop, and then you had the OP. The goal was to go around the mountaintop up to the OP. We went over the mountaintop, had to walk back down, then come up the fucking mountaintop. So I hated him for this because I'm sitting here fucking eating shit trying to fucking get to the top of this. Finally get to the OP. I hand off the mortars. The mortar dudes said, "Why'd you bring more mortars? We had enough." I was like, "God damn it." So I unload all my shit, get the clue out, get the javelin prepped, get everything ready to roll. Fall asleep. Wake up. Now, a picture that I sent you is me and 2 other dudes and an Afghan in the back. That's the OP completed with walls. Before that, there was nothing. There was no cover whatsoever, and it was just barren hilltop, flat hilltop. It was an actual flat hilltop with a house on top of it that wasn't completed. And I think the house had a rock wall that went around it a little bit, but it wasn't anything. If we started taking contact, one good round would ping against all of us and just ricochet and kill everybody. It was one of those situations. So I wake up in the morning, I look over the fucking land, and I'm like, Jesus fucking Christ. And I look over at the hill, and without a doubt, he had pulled us up and over a fucking mountain to go down into a saddle, come back up. And I look at the path that was so much easier and so nice that I could have gone on. I was like, I could have broken my shit last night and murdered myself. And all we had to do was walk up this little fucking path that had already been etched out for us. I'll never forget
what elevation was that OP at?
I honestly have no idea. I want to say 5 to 600. It wasn't one of the mountains, but it was a hill. That's all it was because you could get to the top and then get to the back. It wasn't anything too crazy. It wasn't like a lot of the mountains that we went on. You'd see a peak, you'd get to the peak, and then you'd see another peak behind it, and you'd be like, motherfucker, that whole situation. But this was just a hill. It wasn't that bad. It was my first time ever humping it with the platoon. This is 2 months into the deployment. We established this, and anybody who listens to this that might have been with me, I'm sorry if my timelines are fucked up. It's just the way I saw it. 2 months, we established the OP, and it turns into a 9 to 5 in the sense that 1 week, half of the platoon and a gun team's there, then that half of the platoon gets off of the OP.
So what do you do in your downtime when you're not on the OP? Are you doing other patrols from your other fob?
Disneyland, man. When you're not on the OP, when you're on the OP, you're just pulling security, watching this fucking town. Because the way the OP worked is, on the side we came up, you had a road, and then you had the town of Tangu, but on the backside of it,
Mm-hmm.
you had the river, and they expected on also behind the town about 3 or 4 miles was Afghanistan, Iran.
Pakistan?
Iran? No, Pakistan. You had Pakistan, and they expected dudes to run guns from Pakistan, use our valley, and then cross the river, which never happened. That would have been cool if we had taken out a boat or something, but they wanted us to watch that stretch of land. So that's what you did on the OP. When you were off the OP, you were conducting patrols pretty routinely. At the beginning of the deployment before the OP, we had gone into Ganjgal, where Dakota and that whole situation happened, which we'll reach eventually. But we went in there, and everybody was pretty nice. We didn't have any issues. The elders came out, and then we left, and we went back to Ganjgal right around the time the OP was being stood up, and it was a little bit more tense. And we realized later on that the rocks that were being put in front of the road were to ensure that we didn't go in. And these are big rocks that took 2 or 3 people to move. They were putting them in the road that we were using to move up. So the OP gets established, and we conducted a few patrols into Ganjgal during the evening. Our scouts conducted a fuck ton in the mountains overlooking it, just to get overwatch on the situation. They'd do their thing, and then in the middle of the night, we'd roll up in our MRAPs, dismount. I'd fall asleep in the truck, get woken up, get told to move the trucks, go pick up. Daylight's coming. We pick up the platoon leader, a gun team, and a squad, load them up in the trucks, and that was our off and on. Those were our patrols. We had a couple times where we had a police station that was a little bit further down the road that we'd go to and spend the night at, but it was nothing too crazy. So summer's starting to come up, and things are starting to pick up. We go to Ganjgal in a mounted patrol with 7 gun trucks and an EOD crew. Now, this is what I remember. Again, private, lowly, low totem pole. This is generally the way. Everything you're hearing is from what I saw. And also my stupid fucking mistake that you're about to hear. We're on this patrol into Ganjgal for like the 17th time. We had done our Overwatch, and I don't know who proposed it or what the purpose was for the patrol into it. I think they were saying that someone had seen guns running through or people running, I don't know. But we're rolling through this valley, and a lot of events happen through this. So it's just an S curve into the town. We have a small slope. It was mostly farmland, but the steps where like they make opium so that if water goes to the first step, drains over into the second, and that's the way the road sort of went up there. And then you had a drainage ditch that was actually all concrete on one side that just went the length of the valley. Like it had a step, but it just went all the way down. So we're coming through this S curve. We stop, and one of the squad leaders who had been to Iraq and was he was a good dude to have in a firefight, but he was real like edgy. Like he had seen some shit. And he was a drill sergeant before he got to us too, so that
always helps.
Yeah, we were driving, EOD's in front of us, and no, EOD is in front of us with a mine roller, and they're rolling through. They pass by, squad pass by, and then we get the call to stop, and the squad leader dismounts his truck from the TC seat on the right side. We're using MRAP dashes. If anybody gets a chance, Google MRAP dash. It is a big, ugly, box-looking piece of shit. I am so angry about some of the tools that we got. The MRAP dash was terrible. I wish we were in something cooler.
I'm looking it up
but
now.
He just, yeah.
Oh yeah,
MRAP
those
dash.
were always. They always looked like super. The center of gravity was like really high. Like it'd be super easy to roll one of those things over.
It never happened, but yes, that's what they warned us about. I went up mountains that it had just rained with that motherfucker, and we were skidding down, but never tipped over. But he dismounts of his MRAP, comes around to our side on the driver's side. We were in Humvees. We only had one MRAP. Oh shit, I just remember
crazy.
that. Never mind. Didn't dismount. We were in 1151s, and we had the EOD MRAP up front. It was the big
Buffalo
long motherfucker, square looking. It wasn't the Buffalo. It wasn't that big. It just had the roller on it. Dang, that's weird to remember that. Okay, so go back. Everybody's in 1151s, and he dismounts out of his 1151, comes around, and he's very like his movements I can see are very like he gets out, he's looking at the wall, walks around because we had a wall to our right, and then you had a step, and he says, "Sir, we just had 3 vehicles pass an IED." Like, what? So everybody backs up a little bit. The truck's up front. Go forward a little bit, and my platoon leader dismounts with him. He comes back with a camera, shows me the picture, and without a doubt, there's whatever the Russian equivalent of a 155 is, like a 121 or something, stuck into the side of the mountain with the wire sticking out, ready to blow a vehicle off the side of it. And it wasn't a mountain, again, steps, but it would have blown the vehicle over, but everybody passed by it. We couldn't figure out what would initiate it, but we had EOD up front. So the EOD PL dismounts his vehicle. They're talking to RPL, and they're like, we're going to blow it up, dead in place. Everybody should be good inside their vehicles. It's not a big thing. We're going to blow it outwards. Like, okay. So we're all sitting inside the truck, waiting on EOD to do EOD's thing. And then they say, detonation in 5, 4, 3, boom! The motherfucker explodes. And then in front of me, I see the EOD lieutenant hobbling. I'm looking a little bit more. I'm looking, and then he hits the ground. He falls over, and people rush over to him and shit like that, and they call in a 9 line. You get a medevac out. Helicopter comes in, and as I'm seeing him hobble, the entire back portion of his cap had been blown off by a piece of debris. So this dude's hobbling, gets on the bird. The EOD guys, I don't know why they left.
He blew himself up?
He blew off the back portion of his cap. Okay.
I hate to put it that way, but
you have the truck, right? The truck's ass, and his leg was just barely sticking out, and a piece of shrapnel came and ripped the motherfucker off. But he was a butter bar, brand new, so I don't know. He wasn't planning for it, or nobody was expecting it. But they evac him out. They pull him out, and as they're pulling him out, the EOD guys are like, well, we're going to leave now. And I don't know why. I really don't understand why the EOD guys were leaving. But up to this point, we had dismounted a gun team and a squad with the gun team onto a ridge overlooking the town. And I want to say the scouts that were on overwatch on top of a hill over here were looking into town. And then that's when the rounds start cranking off. During this time, I had handed my M4 to the gunner in case his Mark 19 went down, and he handed me his M9. This is the part where Dom fucks up. So we're sitting there. I'm like, I need to stretch my legs. Get out of the truck, close the door, rounds start cracking off. I look up, Chris Hargis, awesome dude, fucking Tennessee, redheaded, big motherfucker, carried a 240 for a living, sitting there with this Mark 19 just chunking rounds, chuck. I look down the line, saws, dudes that had dismounted with saws are just shooting into this town. Everybody's fucking dumping in the town. You can hear the Barrett on top of the hill that the scouts had just going tunk, tunk. And off to my right, we can hear one of the gun team that went up on Overwatch going off, but then we hear Mark 19 rounds behind us. And we're like, wait a minute. Mind you, I still had my gunner's M9, and I decide that that's a good time to earn my CIB and point the M9 and just start shooting into the village with the M9, like a smart guy.
Jeez.
I regret nothing, but I'm shooting, and we're hearing the Mark 19 rounds behind us. Holster the M9, get in the truck, grab a can of 40 millimeter, hand them up to Hargis. Hargis is like, I need a can. Oh, good thinking. Hand him the can. And then I hear over the radio, EOD, stop fucking shooting at us. The Overwatch team that was on top of the hill, EOD was leaving. As they're leaving, hear contact inside the valley. Their Mark 19 starts shooting at the Overwatch team, thinking that it was the enemy getting a fucking... Yeah.
God.
No one died. No one got hurt. But it was one of those fucking your butt pucker type moments where it was like, holy shit, dude. Like we were this close to getting blown up by our own ordnance. But this is Ganjgal. This is the valley Dakota went into. All right. This is our first firefight. These people did not give a fuck. We start shooting, they're shooting back,
So
and then it stops.
so you
It
guys
was like
were initially you guys engaged each other on accident, another position. And for those that don't know what a Mark 19 is, it's the 40 millimeter grenade launcher. So you're shooting like explosive potatoes, basically. So
yes.
I just want to make sure I'm getting this right. You guys engaged on each other on accident, for whatever reason, and then the village started actually.
No. As we're lighting up the village, the EOD guys hear the gunfight going on and then decide that they're going to engage the village, but see the Overwatch team and decide that they're
Gotcha.
the enemy
Okay.
and start. Thank God they were EOD and not proficient on their guns, though, because the guns started.
Can you kind of be more specific about, because you say you're engaging a village, which sounds super horrible for people that may not be like uninitiated with what you're talking about. Like, I don't want people to have in their minds that you're mowing down women and children running across a village. So can you kind of explain
No.
in more detail like what the enemy composition was?
So Ganjgal Valley up to this point had been fairly friendly aside from the rock thing, and it slowly progressed into not being so friendly to where we started seeing civilian movements out of the town, but more male movement into town. And we were going in for a KLE that we knew we had brought an HA, but it was the situation was dissolving really quickly.
What's an HA?
Into bad things.
KLE is key leader engagement for those.
Key leader engagement. HA humanitarian aid. We had delivered humanitarian aid there once or twice before, but the situation was just deteriorating, and it was getting to a point where we'd roll up to the town and we didn't see kids or women, but we did get stared at a lot by a bunch of men. And the scouts were the ones that initiated contact on it because they're the ones that saw a dude with a rifle starting to fucking bear down on us from inside the ville. And the immediate instruction was obviously get PID on targets, but there was one house and another house that were facing us, and that's where the dude that they engaged was at, right? There was just one house, and then you had the ville that covered the entire mountainside. When I say we engaged the village, we engaged the house. We were dumping on the house because that's where we saw enemies at, and we knew for a fact that there was no one living inside of there. Previous to all of this, we had known that no one was living in there. So we're lobbing 40 mics into the house, and the house stood. Like, it took a fucking beating. If we had lobbed an AT-4, it might have gone down.
Maybe.
That house
It's hard
forever.
to take down a Afghan mud hut, dude. Those things have been built to... The only houses I saw that were destroyed in Afghanistan were destroyed by the war. None of those things fell because of natural causes. Those things are handmade brick that are covered in mud. They make their own bricks. They build up a brick house, and then they coat that whole thing in mud itself. And you would be able to shoot a 50 caliber machine gun at a brick wall and not be able to punch through it. Or if you did, it would take a minute to get through that wall. It's not going to happen. It's just... And they would use that to their advantage. They would punch holes in those and use them as little firing positions. Now they have a little hole they can shoot out of and have pretty good cover.
The murder.
Yeah, the murder holes and stuff like that. And I also want to mention real quick. You talked about your scouts and kind of compared them to recon. It sounds more like they are what we have a stay platoon. That was like a thing that we have in the Marine Corps, the surveillance and target acquisition, which is where the snipers are all for the battalion snipers, and the people that are on the sniper teams but aren't sniper qualified yet. They haven't gone to the actual schoolhouse yet, but they're, So that kind of sounds like what you're talking about when you mention your scout teams.
Yeah, it's scout snipers is what I was trying to get to, not a recon. Recon's more like our Rangers, if anything, and then MARSOC's more like our SF.
Yeah, kind of.
But so they we're engaging the Ville. They get engaged on top of the hill, and they're like, "Stop shooting at us!" And their gun jams, so they have to stop shooting. And the 240 still rocking. Everybody, this is 7 minutes. 7 minutes, this all happens, and everybody gets told to hold fire. We're egressing back to the fucking house and back to Fob Joyce, and that was it. That was our fight.
You guys didn't do like a BDA, a battle damage assessment?
We didn't do shit. We just mounted up in the vehicles, waited for the scouts to get off their position, and then we rolled out. That's the thing about Ganjgal, man. I don't know. We're still leading up to Dakota's thing, but it was like one of those things I don't understand why we kept sending people in there with the intent of conducting some sort of coin operation, because there were nothing but bad guys in that fucking town.
Mm-hmm.
And every time, so we go into Ganjgal, get back to the fob, and I need to do a quick Google check on something. But we get back to Fob Joyce, and it's business as usual as far as patrols go. We're still trying to figure out what's going to go on in Ganjgal or what we're going to do. So I want to say a month or two after that engagement, we decide we're going to do what Dakota and his guys did, but instead with an American U.S. Army infantry platoon. So our platoon commander, our entire platoon, get dropped off by our dog company, which dog, I'm pretty sure, was supposed to be the mounted portion of the battalion, but they did a lot of dismounted shit too. But they're the ones that had tow weapon systems on their trucks. So we go back to Ganjgal for a second round, and we're going to conduct a key leader engagement and do some coin and push further into the valley than anybody has. That was the goal, was to get in there as far as anybody could. So dog drops us off. Scouts are sitting on an OP. So the valley went straight east. You know, it zigzagged, but it was east. So the scouts are on the southern plateau looking down into the valley, providing cover as we're marching into the valley through a riverbed floor, which was a good idea when we decided to egress. That concrete trench that I had said that was there on one side of it, on the north side, is what we used to egress. But as we're going inside of it, we're noticing there's no one. We're not seeing anybody. We're not seeing any movement whatsoever as we're going into the valley.
That's sketchy.
And yeah, we're looking, no kids, no women, no men, nothing. Not even fucking birds, no dogs barking. We're going into the valley, and to the south side you have houses, like brick houses, and then to the north side you had like houses that were a little bit more concaved into the mountain further down on the north side. And then to the east you had the wadi, but to the northeast you had like this structure that hadn't been completed yet. And so my squad leader's like, that's where we want to put the machine guns. So the machine gun teams are spread up to the front and rear of the platoon in order to coordinate. You know, if the front one takes contact, they can initiate, use a squad, engage the enemy, and the rest of the platoon can maneuver, and we can use a secondary machine gun either as rear security or get better vantage point on target. So I'm with the front gun, and we get the front gun on top of the hill with the FO and the medic, squad leader, myself, machine gun, AG. We have a full squad sitting up there watching into the valley. All right. So at this point, we were all prepared to get shot at. We were like, this is going to happen. The Kiowas that we had on station, call sign Pale Horse, shout out to those guys. Pale Horse is amazing. I think they have a brewing company or a coffee company. Pale Horse was our Kiowa pilots that were with us, and they got pulled off station. So we're sitting there waiting for the birds to leave. Birds leave, and it's quiet. When out of nowhere you hear
God.
and a mountain explodes. Like, I'm not even kidding. The mountain explodes. The immediate thought to everybody is they have an artillery piece direct laid on us. We're gonna fucking die now. And we're all on the deck like, what the fuck was that, you know? And sitting down, as I am now, with his Pop-Tart, looking up at us, is the FO's second. And he's like, what are you guys doing? Oh, I forgot to tell you, they're registering the guns.
Oh.
Everybody beat the fuck out of him right then. The entire platoon was like, what the fuck is going on? The world is ending. And we initiated contact inadvertently by doing that. We're beating the shit out of them on top of this hill, and then scouts say, we got movement inside the village. They're squirming. So registering the gun inadvertently started making them stir. We have no women or children. We have no eyes on anything of that nature. And I don't know. I know the platoon leader made the call. We had our company commander and his FO with us, which, by the way, was a heat casualty at the beginning of the. Totally out. But the CO made the decision that we need to pull out and extract immediately. So instead of using the wadi that we came down, which had cover, we decide we're going to use the ditch that was made out of concrete on the north side and just book it the fuck out. We also had the company fires officer with us too. There were a lot of important people there.
So real quick, you guys shot artillery to register the guns, which for people that aren't artillery, what they're doing is they're shooting onto a spot and then they're going to correct from where they gave the target location to where the rounds actually impacted, so that they know, they're basically zeroing the guns for that area because elevation changes and all that stuff. So for people that don't know what that is. So after that happened, you guys started seeing movement down in the village and stuff like that. And did that cause your battalion commander to want to pull out?
It wasn't our battalion.
Or company commander to pull out because there was movement?
Company commander. Yes. That's the thing, man. Like, there was a lot of times like this where the initial contact in Ganjgal with the trucks, well, we have fire superiority. Why aren't we going in to get a BDA? And right now it's like,
yeah, what do you think was going to happen when you go into the village?
We have elevated positions and we have snipers that are pulling security.
Yeah, fire support. Yeah.
We had birds that were going to be back on station that are currently sitting at Asadabad. I don't know. I really don't understand it was at a point in time. I told you they contemplated the idea of taking away our heavy weapons. It was during that part of the war where it was like, we have the ability to take away things from these troops and not completely turn them into a useless thing. We can take away the heavy weapons and give them 240s and 249s on their trucks, and they can still take the fight to the enemy because the summer hadn't kicked off. So it's spring, so we don't want to cause undue collateral damage, so to speak. And I guess that's what the thinking was. Again, PFC Dominguez sitting there with I didn't have a javelin. I had a rucksack full of 60 millimeter mortars, and our mortar crews were up there too. And we had elevation, we had teams on the ground that could start assaulting into the Ville. We had AT4s. Every squad had 2 AT4s per rifleman, or 1 per rifleman in each squad. So 6 AT4s. We had SMAWDs,
that sounds like a pretty intricate operation that you guys had planned, and you were, in the middle of enacting to just pull off of it. Exactly. I wonder, it'd be interesting to hear one of the officers come on and talk about like what caused that decision. That's crazy.
It was definitely, again, my small private brain was just like, man, I'm carrying these mortars. I ran out of water halfway up this fucking hill, So they give us the word to head out, and we start booking it down this ditch. And when I say booking it, everybody turned into Usain Bolt on that fucking, like, dudes with the 240s, dudes with the AT4, everybody's just booking it down this fucking mountain, down this hill, link up with the platoon, start going down the ditch. As we're going down the ditch is the first time that we start hearing gunfire, and it's the scouts engaging targets into the Ville. And the dudes in the Ville didn't see the scouts, but they saw us, so they started shooting at us. And I think one of our dudes with a 240 had a gangster grip off to the side, right? So he fucking turned around, took a knee, and just like during JRTC, started dumping into the Ville. Again, we didn't know if there were women or children in there, but we didn't see any movement other than dudes that were fucking shooting at us in sporadic gunfire. So he's sitting there fucking dumping. I tap him on the shoulder, tell him we're fucking moving, and we're booking it. And I'll never forget the fires officer in front of me eating shit on the side of this fucking, he's just booking it, and then boom, goes down real hard, stands up. I don't think he hit his face, I think his helmet, but you could see that it was like ripped up a little bit. He looks at us, we look at him, and he just keeps fucking moving. And we're booking it all the way down. And like I said, I had run out of water at this point, and I was so thirsty. So we're going down this fucking, I think that is the fastest like 2 miles I have ever run in my entire life. We booking it, we get down. We've got the squads that were in front of us are now pulling security towards the direction that we're headed, telling us to, move past them. The Kiowas are back on station. They're starting to engage targets in the mountains. So we were on the north side booking it downward. The scouts were on the south side. The scouts were engaging targets on the east inside the Ville, but didn't see that there were dudes that were moving up on the northern hill above us. So the dudes above us, the Kiowa started engaging with the 50s once we got out of out of the, I guess, kill zone, splash zone area for rockets, they started putting rockets on target on that hill as we're coming through the valley. And then this is the cherry on top to add to a shitty day of me running out of water. We'd started this movement at like 3 a.m, got dropped off. We started the movement at 4, got dropped off at 3, had to pull security, comms, all that. So this is about 10 o'clock in the afternoon. I'd been out of water for about an hour and 30 minutes. Everybody had been out of water. And now, in order to ensure that we had cover leading up to the vehicles, we have to go on the steps where the water went. So we're talking about a 4-foot drop every 50 meters for a mile. So it's run, step down, pull security. By the end of it, my knees were fucked. Everybody's were, because we had all the kit on us. We're dropping down. We're all out of water. I remember an Afghan ANA dude hands me a bottle of water. It's like, good to go. And I'm like, I don't even care, dude. I don't care. This is
Thank
pee
you,
right
brother.
now. And it is so much. And we get to the trucks. We get back to the fob. And it's one of those Black Hawk Down moments. We got to go back and pick up the scouts. It's like, all right. So we get dropped off. We get in our trucks. We go back, wait for the scouts to come off the hill. This is about 12 or 1. They get in the back of our truck, and we head back to the fob. And that was the last that I think I ever went into Ganjgal. Like, that was the final moment. Like, I don't know what the command decision was there, or why they sent in 5 Marine ETTs with a platoon of ANA.
Because all that was after, right? That was like a month later.
Yeah, that was like 2 or 3 months later. I don't know, but
I'm confused. Yeah. I'm honestly perplexed by the. It makes it. You're making it sound like you guys were, like, I don't know, retreating super fast because of something, like you're running away from the fight. But it doesn't sound like you should have, though. It sounds like you were pulling out before you were even taking contact from the village, and then you started taking contact. Like, that's crazy.
You, I don't know. We were all ready for a fight. Everybody wanted to fight. Nobody was a coward. Everybody would have laid down their life.
I don't want it to.
Man type situation. I know what you mean. It's just one of those things. Like, we had no authority over what the command decision was, and they said pull out, and we were like, fuck it, get the fuck out of here.
I'm always interested to hear, I like having officers come on. I used to get a lot of shit while I was in the Marines from some of my buddies, because I would hang out with the officers a lot, because it's interesting to hear them talk and kind of pick their mind a little bit of how they're thinking about stuff. That way, as a staff NCO at the time, it was like, okay, I can kind of anticipate what this guy's going to do, because I understand him a little better because I've had conversations with them. But it's interesting to see, like, a company commander, how they can fuck something up for no reason. An example, my buddy Alcala, we were in Sangin. While I was there as an Afghan military advisor, he was there with 3-4, 3rd Battalion, 4th Marines. And he was the JTAC for, I think it was Kilo Company. And so Kilo 3-4, I think. And we had this spot outside of Fob Jackson, which is like the area, like one of the main little spots in Sangin. On the other side of the bazaar, beyond the bazaar, there was this culvert under the road. And we spotted on the PGSS, the blimp with the camera on it, a group of guys trying to place IED in that culvert. All right. And we're watching all this on the camera. We're watching a dude run out, throw the bomb down, run back. And they're hanging out in this blown up house. Like, it's already been blown up once. You can see them. We can see from the camera, they have like an RPG leaned against the wall. They got weapons and stuff. And they're running out real quick to drop a piece and run back. And they get the next piece and run it out, And we get a Harrier on station. And a couple times we try to get a drop in. Alcala tries to get a drop in. On these dudes, tries to drop a bomb on these dudes. And they keep getting aborted because the guys are only at the culvert for a second, and then they run back to this blown up building. And even though the building's blown up, it's obvious that no one is living in that building. It's still considered a structure, so the ROEs wouldn't allow us to strike them there. Even though you could see them, you could see their weapons, like they're literally in placing an IED at this point. And One of the times, the dudes run out and are doing something with the IED. Harrier's coming around. Alcala is ready. Hey, are we approved? I think he gives them a cleared hot, maybe gives them the clearance to drop. And then right after he does, like the company commander's like, tell him to abort, like abort him, and aborts him. And then it was like, what was the reason for the abort? And he's like, I haven't been able to. They had already gotten approval from the battalion commander, but he's like, I wanted to check with the battalion commander one more time that it was okay. And it was like, what are you talking about? And we missed. They missed the opportunity and completely missed that drop. Yep. And like, me and my team had to drive over that fucking culvert basically every day, and that became a known point. And every time it'd be like, hey, we're coming up to the IED culvert, and everybody would just kind of like open your mouth and just kind of brace to see. Hopefully, it doesn't blow up this time over it. But that's the kind of shit you see. Like you're adding more layers of bullshit. Like we could have just taken out 3 IED emplacers that were, and you just, I just want to make sure one more time. And that's someone that's more worried about their career than actually getting the fucking job done. And I don't know if that's the situation you were in, but that's an example of an officer making a bad decision that kind of affect,
So let me go back before that last Ganjgal fight. Me and my platoon leader had grown close because I was driving for him, and he was a good dude. He was Army, college,
West Point.
He was a West Point graduate on the football team, and he was supposed to go artillery, so he was really familiar with our mortarmans type shit and calling in for fire. But he was supposed to go artillery, but he requested infantry, went through ranger school, and then immediately came to us. Like, he was a bad motherfucker. He was big, and me and him grew closer because we both loved music and we both loved punk. And he introduced me to a couple bands when we were on deployment. I remember being on CQ when we were back home before the deployment, and him walking up to me as I was listening to music on my laptop, just pulling guard. He was like, who's that? And, we started talking about music and stuff like that. So that grew our bond closer. And then every firefight we had, he wasn't someone sitting behind a radio. He was someone organizing. And it got to a point where one of the squad leaders had to be like, sir, you need to chill out. We'll send a runner, type situation. And he adjusted to it and got into his area. So this firefight during Ganjgal, for the last time, as we're booking it down the road, I'm pretty sure he wondered why we were pulling out too. Yeah. That was the initial idea. Our company commander was amazing. He had been a in the Korengal as a lieutenant, stayed with the battalion, and then got bumped up to a captain, and then the CO of Alpha Company, Attack Company, and he was solid too. It had to be from somewhere else. I don't know.
There's always shit that we don't see, like the bigger picture stuff.
Yeah.
I get that.
Again, just worried about water and what I'm going to eat next. So
I'm just trying to survive out
here. We're done with that. And for that operation, we pulled the rest of our platoon off the OP and used one of our sister platoon squads to man the OP with the ANA. ANA we sectioned up the OP between ANA on one side, the scouts on the other, and then our platoon in the middle. So the scouts were still up there, or one of their squads are up there. We pulled ours off, did the Ganjgal thing, and then we're back on rotation on the OP. So this is the funny part. The section that's off of the OP, I don't understand why we got put into these situations or what dictated our platoon to be the QRF for everything. Like, if something happened in Kunar province or Nuristan, we were the QRF for it. And we're talking, this was a Beverly Hills Billies trip up north type situation. We had just gotten out of Ganjgal 2 months later or a month later. It's summer's picking up and things start happening really quickly in our area. And this was the time of the overruns where everybody was getting overrun. There was this OP called OP East. They built a combat outpost near it after it had happened. But OP East, the Taliban had organized to overrun OP Boreali and OP East, and succeeded in overrunning OP Boreali and or almost killed a couple dudes at OP East. Me, again, lowly private, we're going to an OP that's been overrun, and we're going to be the QRF. And when they said that, I thought it was going to be in our immediate sector. It turned into a 4-hour fucking ride north to go in our vehicles to go to this OP.
Real quick reaction force.
Yes, QRF, quick reaction force. So we're going down, fucking riding through. It was our sector of Kunar had decent roads. They were paved. They were still windy and shit, but they were paved. And then we get into the Nuristani area, and it turns into like, you know, like you're just sitting there, teeth are chattering. I remember we passed an MP unit that was doing stuff, and we saw their patches, and it's like those aren't anywhere near those aren't 10th Mountain. Those are fucking 3rd ID dudes or 4th ID. So we passed them. We're going up to this combat outpost. Now, OP Boreali and OP East were established fairly well. And the combat outpost we were going to, I feel like they had decided to build a week before, because when we showed up, they still had a Bobcat running around. We had one of our squad leaders jump on the Bobcat and start filling Hescos around the perimeter of the spot. But the company commander was real shook, and he stayed inside the HQ a lot of the time. We roll up, we dismount, and it's raining. And there's these 4 dudes. To go back a little bit, our battalion had real strict policy that we were only to wear Army equipment. We could use secondary pouches from different companies, but we had to use our FLCs and our IOTVs.
What?
And we're not permitted to use.
Can you tell us what those are? I don't know what an FLC or.
Yes. Okay. The IOTV is their intermediate outer tactical vest, which is the big old turtle shell thing, you know, armor. Our ballistic armor with plates, and the plates were 2 front, 2 side. We had side plates too. It made you feel like a gladiator, and it sucked ass going up mountains, but it would protect you. You had side SAPI plates. The FLC is the fighting load carrier, which was you guys had them. It's just the webbing that you had that you put your pouches on.
We call it LBV, a load bearing vest.
Yeah. At the beginning of the deployment, we had a couple of dudes that bought these super fan. One of them bought one that had a desk, like it was a chest rig that you unzip and it had little straps.
I know what you're talking about.
Desk, right? Yeah, and that immediately got us banned from having anything nice. At that point, it was you can't use any of that. The sergeant major saw it and was like, he saw one of our squad leaders had one of those Black Hawk carriers that carried 4 pouches, but they could carry 4 AR mags in every fucking pouch. So he had a total of 12 fucking mag pouches out to here and fucking grenades, and the sergeant major saw that and was like, nope, you have to wear all this. So we dismount at this combat outpost that was being established that isn't, I don't even think it's named yet, but by the end of that day, we were calling it COP Pirtle King. Not Turtle, Pirtle King. And Pirtle King were 2 gentlemen that had died in a previous engagement with 4th ID. So we dismount at Cop Pirtle King, link up with these dudes, and they're smoking and joking, and they're talking about all these dudes they killed that while they were on OP East, which OP East is overlooking Cop Pirtle King, and OP Boreali, which is further down the road. They were talking about how they had dudes within 5 meters of the perimeter of the OP, and they were engaging them. They swore to God that every single one of them said that they had smoked at least 1 or 2 dudes. And they said that they were within hand grenade range and they were popping their claymores. Dang. Mind you, we had just done the Ganjgal thing. We hadn't really come face toe to toe with the enemy, so to speak. So a lot of us are, getting prepped and ready and hyped up for something, because we knew the OP was up there and we knew an OP had been overrun. So we were sort of wondering, like, why are you guys just fucking around here? Why isn't someone blowing up the OP?
Yeah.
And it obviously we're 4 hours to the fucking dance, 4 hours late to the dance, so they were gone. There was nothing up there. OPE still had a not even a full platoon. It had like three fire teams from 3 different squads. They were all just broken up in the different sections up there. 1 second. Fucking dogs.
Mine was snoring just a little bit ago. I was wondering if anybody heard him.
I have a Catahoula leopard dog, and that bitch will go off like a shotgun if she hears the sound. But so we get there, and they have these squads that are on top of it. And the story that we get is that OP Barialai had a green on blue event where they had an infantry squad, not quite a platoon, and Latvian ETTs. ETT stands for Embedded Training Teams. Had a Latvian ETT, and the ANA turned on the ETTs and the Americans that were up there, and the Taliban overruns the position, takes a satchel charge and throws it into the ASP, the ammo supply point, and blows up the fucking OP. They said they saw a mushroom cloud from like 5 miles away. And the only person to survive the overrunning of the OP, mind you, I don't know the numbers. I'm not sure there was an American squad there or not, but I'm pretty sure there was. The only person that survived was a Latvian sniper that had been crushed under debris after the ASP blew up. And he's the only one that survived after it got overrun. And that's the reason they called us in. So we're talking to these dudes, get the information about all of it, and then they're like, the information we got was tomorrow we're going up to the OP to dismantle it because it's too open. Like, they're establishing this combat outpost right below it, but they want to take out the OP that's above it because it almost got overrun. It didn't get overrun, but it almost did. It's like, I don't know. Again, I don't know what the tactical planning there was, but that's what they wanted. So as a side note, we still have half of our platoon sitting on OP Tangu, not knowing what the fuck's going on. They had no idea where we were. We didn't give them any information, so they're sitting there picking their noses. We typically stay on the OP. Oh yeah, that's what it was. We typically stay on the OP for a week, and this was the day that we were supposed to go pick them up.
And they didn't know your QRF had been activated.
They didn't know. So they're down south. We're headed up north. So we're sitting at this combat outpost, and no one gave us the final. All right, just a quick rundown. The living conditions. There was the HQ, which had HESCOs around it, air conditioned, right? And then we had our vehicles stationed everywhere. There were like 25 vehicles stationed inside this COP, this combat outpost, which shouldn't have been, but there were so many vehicles and guns pointed everywhere. It was pretty secure. And then they set up the 60 mortar next to this Connex, and I didn't really understand what this Connex was. Well, you open it, it's one of the only air-conditioned buildings, and it's stacked up like Auschwitz with cots going 1, 2, and then you had a third row, and you would sleep like it was like you guys on ship, like very small type hole for you to sleep in, but it was the only air-conditioned spot, and it was pitch black. And I remember that first day, they told us that we had the privilege of getting the only air-conditioned spot, and I was like, oh, cool, air conditioning. We go inside of it, and we're like, fuck air conditioning. So a lot of people didn't stay in there. You could sleep in there. It was all right for that, but we get told we're getting that. We're establishing our defenses, our perimeter. They had a little man-made porta-john that, of course, had flies trying to enter your body through every orifice.
Good times.
It was great times. So we're establishing it. We had a scout squad roll up with us, and they were told that they were going up during the day. So they go up there, and we didn't get any word as far as what we were doing. We just knew that we were there as a QRF just in case, I guess, people showed up. And I'm falling asleep. It's about 8 or 9. We'd been up all day. It was hot, starting to cool off. Start going to sleep. And at about 11:30, the platoon sergeant's walking around, waking everybody up, saying we're going up to the OP right now. This is terrain we've never been up. We've never been up to this OP our entire life, and it was high as fuck. I want to say 8 to 900 meters up. And we've never been up there. This is our first time in this type of austere condition. It's like, Dom, don't worry about the javelin, just bring the clue. I hated that fucking clue so much. Every time we went on something, he didn't want me to take the javelin. He said, bring the clue, we need the thermal. So I grabbed the clue, grabbed my M4, grabbed some water. We walk up to the OP, and I was following our mortarmen, and it was kind of funny because the platoon's like staggering, trying to climb up rocks and shit, and the mortarman is a little bit older. He knows he's walked around the mountains a little bit, and he's just like, there's a rock, everybody's climbing over, the mortarman just walks around it. I follow the mortarman, we just climb up as people are like trying to fucking get over this So it turns into us going up to the OP. We get to the OP. Scouts greet us. They tell us that there's no more claymores on site, that they blew them all the day before during, the initial attack. And they say, we're going to pull security on the rear. So, okay. So we get out of the OP onto the backside of it. And there's a peak, and I'm on one side. There's a machine gun on another side. I brought up a Mark 48. I took the Scouts Mark 48 with me. They gave me their Mark 48 to hand it off to a guy at the OP, but it turned out that I needed it because we had our two 240s pointed outward, and then I had the Mark 48 pointed in another
What's
direction.
the Mark 48?
The Mark 48 is a condensed 240 in the sense that it shoots 7.62 by 51, but it's a saw. It's an I think it's an FN2, but it's a larger saw but a smaller 240. It's a saw with 240 capabilities, so to speak. So I'm sitting there with a Mark 48 on security, nodding off as the sun's coming up. They tell me I get an hour of rack, so I put the gun up against my shoulder and pass out right there on the side. Wake up to someone else saying, "Hey Dom, wake up. We're on guard." Like, all right, just sitting there. We're all just sitting on the top of this rock. And then in the back, you can hear, "Yeah, I'm seeing movement. Roger. Hog on station. Drop. 30 seconds." And then you see a JDAM explode out in the fucking distance. And apparently the dudes that had scattered off the mountain were possibly trying to make a re-attack on to the OP, so we dropped bombs on them, and then they were dropping more. And then it was about 12 o'clock in the afternoon, maybe a little bit earlier, maybe a little bit later, but they're like, all right, we're pulling off the OP. I had just pulled security. I had walked up there with a Mark 48, sat there, pulled security, looked out at a fucking hill, saw some bombs drop, and I'm like, where's the action, Like, I felt terrible that people had died and all that, but I was like, we drove from our place to your place, and now we're just sort of sitting on the side of this mountain. Not to be a dick, but that's what.
So, to back it up, that OP was attacked. That OP, they lost a lot of dudes up there, right?
So OP Barialai lost a lot of dudes, and then OP East, which is the one that we were on that they were taking down, was on the precipice of getting overrun. Like, it was that.
So
close. It was really
okay.
close.
So I was thinking that you had gone up to the OP that the training team had been killed and stuff like that on. Sorry, my confusion.
Oh, we didn't need to go to OP Barialai because that bitch was gone.
Crazy.
They vaporized that fucking place. It was that whole situation.
Were you guys involved in any kind of personnel recovery or anything like that? Because obviously they're going to go up there and pull the bodies out.
We weren't. Somebody was. They called in a PJ and SF team to go recover everything that was over there.
Tough.
But I'm sitting there, bored as fuck, trying not to nod off. Been up 24 hours, or 34 hours up to this point. Got an hour of nap time, still nodding off. Like, all right, we're pulling out. So I grab the Mark 48, start walking down. I had my M4 slung on my back too. And the scout dude's like, "Hey man, is that my machine gun?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, I handed him the fucking Mark 48, and I had my bag with 200 rounds of 7.62 in the little pouches that they come in. The ones that you can sling off the side of the canvas pouches that they come in. I hand him those 200 round boxes, and he takes the Mark 48, and then we start a little walk down. And the walk down turns into us eating shit all the way down. Just fucking avalanche of troops falling down the fucking hill. And we get back to COP Keating. They set off throughout the entire night. What they had been doing is setting up charges and det cord so that they could vaporize it. So they blow it up. And then that night, Kiowas come in, and this is the first time I'd ever seen the GAU-19 used. And it's just going to town on the OP for some reason. They launch rockets at it. The next day after that, we go to sleep inside the Connex. Obviously, we're just pulling security, waiting to pull out now. We stayed there for 6 days. It's kind of weird. Like, we got there, and then we stayed there for an additional 6 days because 6 to 10. I want to say 10. It was a lot longer than we anticipated because they were sure they were going to try to overrun COP
Mm-hmm.
King. But
so you guys destroyed, or well, one was destroyed by the enemy, but the other. Oh, so you're basically your two Overwatch positions. You guys took them out and were like, well, not using those anymore.
Not 4th ID, man. Different command structure. Right. I don't know. I really don't know what the deal is, man. They blew up the 2 OPs. The 1 OP that had actually sustained and survived the fight, we don't need that anymore. We'll just let the enemy get closer, I guess.
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense, man. But, a lot of these decisions are made by people that are never on that ground. Don't even actually know what it looks like to be standing in those positions.
To go forward a little bit, Red Platoon, Clint Romashay's thing at COP Keating, if you read the Outpost book, that's pretty much what happened. Was they saw that the grid line or the lines that dictated the terrain were getting really close, and they were like, "That's where we want it. Why do you want it there? That's not a good place. You can see that the terrain is turning into a fucking the inside of a bowl. Like that's where we want to build it type situation." And that is what happens. It's just someone inside an office saying, "That's where I want to put it," and then we get dictated that we're going to be doing it.
Yeah.
But we get we're sitting at COP King. I remember falling asleep inside that air-conditioned Auschwitz Connex, and all of a sudden I start hearing ping, 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 and we're inside a metal box, and you just hear like someone beating a fucking hammer on the side of it. And I remember going outside and our mortar teams registering their guns onto OP East because they knew the target location, and they're registering their. That just never left with me. I've been able to after they registered their guns and all that. I remember going back to sleep, and they decided to drop like 7 or 8 more mortars, and I just slept through it. I can sleep through anything now. But we're at COP King. They gave us like a 1 day of R&R where we went to FOB Bostic, which was run by 4th ID. FOB Bostic. Bostic, after reading the Outpost, turns out that it's another dude that died at COP Keating at some point in time. But Captain Bostic was a dude that had died. But we go to FOB Bostic for R&R for a single day. They give us new uniforms. We go back to King for a day or two, and then we head back out to Kunar, back to FOB Joyce. And that was our first QRF.
Yeah.
So we're sitting there at FOB Joyce, just doing regular patrols. This is during the Afghan election, and we get word that someone, I want to say it's Bo Bergdahl, walked off the OP, right? That cocksucker. I want to say it was him.
He has no fans in the army, huh?
Yeah, fuck that motherfucker. He walks off wherever it was at, and they had sent out a team, and they rolled a Humvee into the Korengal River. And they said they're trying to recover the bodies, but you guys are going to be the QRF for them. And it rapidly, from one day through the night, turned into we're going. So we had an extra 240, and I'll never forget this. I had my Javelin, the Clue, extra batteries. We didn't need food or water, so I just brought extra ammo, extra frags. I had a Claymore. All this on my rucksack.
You're carrying some serious weight, man.
They fucking tell me I'm taking a 240, so I strap my M4 to my rucksack. I grab the 240 on my front. I have a 50-round belt on that. It took 3 people to get me up, and then I had to walk over to the landing pad. We all get over there, the whole platoon. Everybody's loaded for bear, ready to fuck some shit up. Because we're going, our battalion, as I previously said, was established in Korengal. And the moment we found out there was a possibility we were going to go, even the sergeant major was like, take everything. Take the fucking kitchen sink. If it shoots fucking bullets, you need to take it. I'm pretty sure it was to a point where they said if we could disassemble the tow, we should probably take that too. It was one of those things where you're going into a place where we were, and we want you guys to be prepared to murder whatever's out there. Like if it was one of those, it's going to be serious. It was one of the few times where I was like, if we get shot at, everybody's going black on ammo. or having to conduct a reload within the first 10 seconds of this firefight, because everybody was going to fucking mag them. So we're sitting on the pad, and I had all this weight, and I'm fucking sitting there hating my life, and we get the word that we're not going. They had sent someone else to do the QRF. So it's like, yay! The one time we were all pretty excited to go to the Korengal, sort of like going back to our roots type situation.
Isn't that weird?
Never...
Like, regular people would be like, "What are you talking about? Like, why would you want to go to a place where it's like probably the most dangerous place in the world right now?"
So that we could have our Korengal story. But
unfortunately, those stories come with a lot of sadness. Like if you make it through something like that, it's something you can be proud of and something that you will talk about or maybe not talk about, but something that will be a part of you for the rest of your life. And it's weird. I don't know, man. I don't want to say it's glamorized, but like before you go into something like that, it seems like you want that. I want to have one of those war stories. But I think guys that have gone through something like that are like, bro, like it's not worth it. You know what I'm saying? It's just
the moment they told us we were going in, everybody that had been in the Korengal that was in our platoon turned white and was it. When they saw that I was carrying the 240 and M4, they said, "Can you carry any more grenades?" type situation. It was one of those where they were like, it's ever since the establishing of the combat or Korengal outpost, it has been a firefight in the Korengal Valley aside from the worst part of winter. And that's what we were expecting, was to get off the landing pad at the Korengal outpost was still at that time taking contact every day whenever a bird would land. We were expecting a fight the moment we got off the bird. On top of that, we were supposed to push to an OP that the guys at the OP were going to be taken off of so that they could be put at the Korengal outpost, so the guys at the Korengal outpost could go scour the valley for the bodies of these two dudes that had drowned inside the river, which they did recover eventually.
Fuck, man. That sucks.
We never got the word to go. Someone else, I don't know. I think they recovered the bodies before we were put on the bird to
It's
head
weird,
out.
man. These places have these places have their legacy. You know what I'm saying? Like when they told me in 2013, they're like, "Hey, bro, you're going on an Afghan advisor team. You're going to be working with the Afghan National Army." I'm like, "All right, cool. Where at?" And they're like, "Oh, your team's going to Sangin." And I'm like, "Fuck, man." And I was seriously scared. I was like, "Holy shit, dude. Like this place has a legacy. Like 3rd Battalion, 5th Marines lost 25 guys there during their 7-month deployment, killed, and over 100 wounded." And that's like, I don't know. It was definitely, I was scared going in. Like to say anything else would be a lie, and it's, I don't know. It's just it's a weird feeling knowing you're going to a place that is like legitimately a war zone. You know what I'm saying? It's not, you're not going to Bagram and having fucking dinner at the chow hall and going to green bean coffee and then Skyping the family. We're going to a place where you're living in the dirt. Basically you're living in these HESCO bunkers and they're shooting every day. There was a suicide or a fucking V-bid that blew up outside of our FOB, tried to shoot helicopters down as they're landing, that shit.
Yep.
And it's like, man, yeah. So I know what you're saying, that dread,
It was the dread and anticipation that we're going to get into another fight. So that's cool, but we're also probably going to lose people on the way out of the door. It's going to be fucking Normandy conditions. But we didn't get the word. And again, this is during the election time in Afghanistan, and there's so many parts to it that I can't really remember where we got the word that we were going. But it was the dead of night, or not the dead of night. It was like the middle of the afternoon, a couple months late, or a month or two later, and they told us we're going into QRF, a town. Like, okay, we're going into QRF. The way this thing built up is sort of fucking crazy. So they tell us we're going to QRF for a town that has been overrun by the Taliban. It's like, okay. We get all our equipment, get everything ready to roll. This was a rucksack mission. We had our rucksacks prepped and ready to go, add a javelin and the clue ready to roll. It was just going to be a regular mission, but we were QRFing. So we hear a familiar name, Fob Bostic, and they say, we're going to Fob Bostic. It's like, okay. So we get our equipment, get on the birds, get ready for PZ or get PZ posture. Birds come, we get on the Chinooks, and they drop us off at Bostic. So for 3 days we sit in Bostic. Throughout these 3 days in Bostic is a shit show. It So we first initially hear that there's a town that has been overrun by the Taliban, and the ANA or ANP that was there, the Afghan National Police, had been overrun and pushed out, and the Taliban were all over the town, right? So this is day one, and they're preparing, mind you, again, PFC. We had a writer, you might know him, Bing
Oh yeah.
West, with us. He was supposed to go in with us, and then we had a CBS news crew that was going in with us. So this is rapidly turning into something of importance. I didn't know that it was important because of the election at the time. I just knew that the election was going on. But Karzai apparently wanted everybody to vote, and by force if need be type situation. So day one, we're sitting at the fob, eating chow, living the good life. Like, this is what it is. Not really understanding the full situation that's at hand. That night on the fob, someone had gotten the great idea to leaflet the town of Barge Matal, telling them that we were coming in when we were coming in, and anybody that was still in the town to be considered hostile. And that's the first time I'd heard the name Barge Matal. It was like some fucking shitty town out in the middle of nowhere in Nuristan province that no one had ever heard of. So the second day, we're still living the good life, and it's rapidly turning into, now we're getting battalion level JTACs attached to us. We're getting a ANP platoon of police attached to us. We're getting a squad from our scout platoon, snipers and scouts attached to us. And they're talking about how they're going to take fully assembled Dishka machine guns off the back of a CH-47 and put them into firing position so that when we get off the board, we have fire support. And it's getting a little bit bigger, like, what the fuck's going on? Then they say, we can't do it tonight because there's going to be cloud coverage and we're not going to be able to get this AC-130 on standby for support. Like, we've never had this much support in our fucking lives. We had Kiowas. We had Apaches once. We had an F-15 do a fucking show of force one time. They told us that the C-130s wouldn't get ready, or the C-130s couldn't fly when there was that much cloud coverage. And they said that they were going to get F-15s or they were going to get A-10s, but all they could get was an F-15 ready to roll. This is the third day, and that night we're going to head out. And everything's culminating together. Bing West gets food poisoning and is sitting on the toilet. CBS crew still ready to roll. Our platoon is like, it starts coming out that, again, it's going to be like Normandy. People are going to come off the bird and they're just going to start getting smoked. It's going to be, you got to be prepared to, deal with the situation. Dom, the moment you get off the bird, you need to get the javelin up and ready to roll and start engaging targets if need be. We're going to have the Dishkas with the AMP dudes on one flight, and then we'll have a Dishka on another flight. There's going to be 4 Chinooks dropping all of us, and 1 Blackhawk dropping our HQ element. This thing had turned into our company commanders now going with us, our battalion commanders now going with us. These JTACs that we've never seen before are going with us. These AMP dudes that we've never worked with are going with us. Scout dudes are going with us. We were sitting on the tarmac, and the scout dudes were passing around to each other pipe bombs that they had made out of claymores, because they said that they're going to start using them inside the fucking houses. This is rapidly turning into a what the fuck situation. I can't hear you.
I must have bumped my mute button. Sorry. Did all this like all this ass coming up, this reinforcement coming up to help you guys out, like prepping for this? Did it give you comfort, or did it give you like a sense of dread? Like, oh fuck, what are we going to?
The moment they said that people were going to die coming off the bird is when I was like, oh, what?
God, dude.
That's
a way to get morale going before you get, hey guys.
Night 2, they told us that the AMP were receiving ammo from us, that we were doing a CDS drop for ammo for them. I have no idea what CDS stands for, but it was a parachute drop of ammunition that we were going to do for them. And we dropped it, and the Taliban got it. and the Taliban now had all the arms that the fucking ANA or ANP dudes were going to get. It's like
God.
not only did we give them the day, we provided them ammo to fight us with. So night 4 or night 3 turns into us trying to get some sleep. About 11 o'clock, the birds are on deck. Everybody's loading up, getting ready to roll. We're supposed to be at the LZ by 3, in the town by 4:30, and that was our timeline. Again, PFC Dominguez. I'm not sure about all of it. The 2 things that I sent you from WikiLinks on Instagram are of the first day and of the second day as far as the fights go. But so we're on the bird, and I remember getting lost as far as no one really explained to me what I was doing as far as who I was following. But I knew I had my platoon sergeant on the bird with me. So all these helicopters are going into this valley near the town of Barge Matal. And this river valley was fairly wide, so you could fit the Chinooks all over these fields. They all land, and we dismount. And I remember grabbing my ruck, pulling as hard to the right as I could to try to stick inside the bird because we had a Dishka inside our bird. I'm getting out. I get outside, drop the ruck. I sit down, put the ruck on my back. I stand up, and I see the fucking AMP dudes slapping the top cover of the Dishka, charging it, and getting ready to start fucking lighting shit up. Everybody's out of the helicopter. Birds start to pull out. You can hear them leaving, but you could hear the distinct sound of the Apaches still doing their little whirly thing. And you could hear something even further in the distance, which was the C-130. And we're sitting there. I'm sitting there like, this is fucking intense. I'm lost. Like, I had no idea where. I had my nods on, I had my bag, and I could not find any fucking buddy. So by process of elimination, I was like, these dudes with the machine gun are definitely not Americans. Maybe those twinkling things over there that I can only see with my night vision on might be. So I start hobbling over to there. The landing zone had a river off to a side, but it also had a bridge, and then it had a mountain with a road next to it. So we had a road on our side, river, road, and then a couple of houses. And then you had Barge Matal, which was further to our south, I want to say, and it was a big bitch. And the whole time I'm like, why aren't we getting shot at? What the hell's going on? So we get up to this wall. I find my platoon sergeant. This man, this is the same guy that found the artillery round in Ganjgal. He was a very difficult person to work with, and his logic didn't always come through. And he was the acting platoon sergeant because our platoon sergeant was on leave. And the immediate thing that he told me was, "You're going to take the javelin and carry it at the high ready into this town when we assault it."
What?
Yeah. Full tit. You're going to get into the town. We're going to cache the rucks here. We'll have a truck come down and grab them. You're going to go into the town with a fucking javelin at the high ready. I was like, okay. So we're sitting there at the side of this river. Daylight's slowly creeping in, and then you hear an ANP dude scream something, and then you hear him shooting, and he's shooting down the road. And then the Apaches, from what I heard, get eyes on whatever the AMP dude's shooting, verify that it's on the other side of the river. And this is the first time I'd ever seen this happen. It didn't go, I see him, I'm engaging him. It always went, I see him, let me get clearance. Clearance is given. Are you sure it's a bad guy? Engage. It went, I see what you're shooting at, 30 millimeter going off, killing the motherfucker. And that was the first time I was like, this isn't normal. This isn't what we're not used to this. We need more clearance, like it was ingrained into me. So they smoke that dude, and it turns into us leapfrogging into the town. We finally get in there. I'm at the high ready. We get ourselves situated for about the first 2 hours or so. Set up fighting positions, establish sectors of fire. We brought up an 81 millimeter mortar with us along with a 60. So we had an 81 on top of the hill and a 60 down low. And I remember sitting there, getting on guard all day, nothing. They said that they heard chatter, ICOM chatter, but we couldn't see anything, and it was just like I don't know. It went from the invasion of Normandy to OP Tengu real quick. We were just sort of hanging out, and I remember I did a lot of things wrong at that point in time. I got real laxed. I pulled off my helmet. I set my rifle down over at this thing, and I went over to a crate that I had set up. I had pulled out an MRE. And I remember there were kittens out there, and I had dropped some food, and a kitten came and ate it. And I opened up my MRE. My favorite MRE was chicken
That's a good one.
fajita with a rice pilaf. Yeah. And I mixed it together. I would mix it inside the MRE bag and then throw salt in there and some hot sauce, and use the tortillas with the jalapeno cheese that it came with. And I remember sitting there, and they initiated with an RPG. They always initiate with a bang. From the mountains, so I'm gonna say it's south, north, east and west. East and west. They initiated from the south. I was looking directly at the direction that the RPG came from, but they initiated from the south with RPGs into the Ville. And we had Barge Matal was broken up into the west side of the river and the east side. We were on the east side. West side was, I don't think it had been established yet. We didn't have the scouts over there at this time, but they initiate with RPGs and PKM fire. I remember standing up, looking over, and then looking down and screaming "fuck" because I had dropped my MRE and stepped on it, and it exploded everywhere. And I look back up, and I start running to my kit, which is south of me, towards my helmet and my rifle, and I go to grab it, and then I start seeing the plumes of smoke going off, and I'm like, fuck my life. And this is sort of hazy. I remember getting up, running towards the aid station that they had established north of us that was just inside this shitty little building, and an RPG coming. I'm running past this wall. An RPG came in through a shop window into the wall, hits the wall, blows me. No, that didn't happen yet. I run up towards the aid station, run down this alleyway, and RPG blows up in front of us in the alleyway, me and my friend Barnes. I look over at him, he looks at me, we say we're okay. We're like, yeah, I need to get my fucking rifle. So I fucking turn around, run back, come down. That's when the RPG comes through a shop window, hits the building. The RPG blows me forward. I'm pretty sure I got concussed throughout that because I blacked out a little bit. I wake up to my medic smacking me. The RPG had come in through a window. It was like the worst money shot of all time because it came through a window, blew out the backside of a wall. The wall exploded outward, shooting shrapnel into my squad leader and my platoon sergeant, and I think another squad leader, as we're all trying to find places to, get into so that we can shoot back. I wake up to my medic smacking me. I'm like, I think I'm hit in the back. He's like, Dom, you're good. He's like, you're fucking good. Get the fuck up and start fighting. I stand up and I look over and I see my squad leader on the ground, and they're trying to drag him. And I run over to him and I drag him into the aid station that they had established with our RTO, who was a machine gunner. So our acting RTO sitting there with a mic trying to, coordinate whatever he can. And I'm stating this the way I remember seeing it. And we get my squad leader, Sergeant Lindstrom, into the aid station, and I remember them cutting his pants, and he was naked from the waist down below. And I'm sitting there still in shock, like, what the fuck's going on, And a medic's like, Dom, you need to get the fuck out there. Somebody said, Dom, you need to get the fuck out there and get the javelin up. I'm like, okay. And I'm like, Doc, I need this. I grab the medic's rifle. I go outside, and the medics are people are getting fucked up left and right. Squad leader gets hit, platoon leader gets hit. Platoon leader sitting in the aid station screaming at the RTO because they don't want to let the platoon leader out, but he still needs to fucking lead. I don't know what's going on with the CO, the company commander, or the battalion commander as far as they're coordinating whatever they need to. We had been given those two JTACs, and they're trying to coordinate fires. but the birds had just gone off station to refuel, and Apaches weren't able to get back on station for a little bit for some reason. Mind you, this is all secondhand. I really don't know what happened. I get back down to my fighting position. I find my rifle. I put Doc's rifle on the hook that I had used, or what the piece of wood that I'd used to hang my rifle. I take my rifle, and I remember being the FO shooting. I reload, and I run. We had the building that had gotten hit with the RPG was now on fire because of that RPG blast, and rucksacks that we had staged inside that building were now on fire. So we're pulling them out, and then I remember something exploding and me being like, holy shit, I duck inside the building again, having another panic attack for a second inside there. And I was like, I can't breathe. And then I realized that I was inhaling smoke, so I fucking run back outside, grab my rucksack, grab the javelin, or already had the javelin and clue ready to go. So I grab the clue, hook it up to the javelin. We put a table in front of us so that we could use it as, sort of there was no cover other than this shitty fucking school table. And I remember getting the javelin, getting it up there. I'm aiming through the fucking scope. I had a squad leader tell me, Dom, they're fucking up there. And the squad leader was out of it because he had been blown up and now his hand was bleeding, so he had a loss of blood. And I'm sitting there. He's standing to my left. I hit the button to activate the battery control unit on the motherfucker. I hear it heat up. I have my target. I pull the right trigger. And right when I'm in the moment of this, like my finger is crinked, it's about to go, I hear... I'm like, what the fuck? I look up. The BCU that was on the side of the missile was now
What's
on the ground.
What's a BCU?
The battery cooling unit. It is when you hit the trigger to get a lock with a javelin, it immediately starts up the round, and you have 5 minutes before the battery control unit can no longer cool the components of the round. It's a whole situation, but you have a BCU on the side of it that does this, and it's meant to cool the round. And I'm sitting there with this fucking thing, and that bitch is now on the ground. And I look over at the squad leader, and he's like, I'm like, it's supposed to do that. And I fucking take the round out, get another one, and then I get back up and I shoot it. What had happened was it got shot off.
Oh.
This thing's fucking sitting right here, and that motherfucker got launched into the fucking air by someone fucking shooting it. And I was...
Man.
Just to sort of like to take hold of the situation, so I didn't freak out my squad leader and make him know that we were definitely getting targeted. I said, it's supposed to do that, and I fucking grabbed another one, do my thing, target, lock gate, bang, fire the fucking javelin into the side of a mountain where we had the suspected origin of where they were at. They gave me the position, I fucking launched the motherfucker. So that's the first $150,000 missile that I shot into the side of a mountain in the hopes of trying to stop this attack.
Now, when you were looking through the clue, which is what does that stand for again? Command launch unit. That's where the sights and stuff are, right? That's like the guts of the thing, and then you hook the missile to it.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so when you're looking through that and you're using the thermal imagery on it, could you see the enemy fighters through your thermals, or were you just locking into an area?
I was just logging into an area, honestly. I couldn't see shit. Like, there was so much smoke coming up from everywhere. There was so much chaos. We had the 60s that were going. We had the 81s that were going. We had 240s. We had everybody with M4s. We had 203s going everywhere. The gunpowder and residue, I tried to use the thermal to the best of my ability, and I couldn't see it. I couldn't see anything.
So you guys are just, at this point, this is in the initial moments of the attack. At this point, you guys are just trying to gain fire superiority and maybe get a little bit of suppression so that you can kind of get your wits about you and then start a good attack. Okay.
Yes. And we're sitting there going to town with everything. I remember I was all over the place during the fight because I had the missile that shot off, and then I had to book it to go find the other one. I found the other one, used it, and I didn't have any more missiles. So my goal was to find an AT-4 that I could use to try to continue to engage the mountainside. And again, this is to the southwest that we're all engaging. And then we start taking contact direct west and northwest. They're starting to funnel out towards the mountainside, shooting at us into the bill. And we're sitting there. Everybody's engaging. More RPGs are going off. I remember booking it to the top of the hill and seeing the JTACs huddled up behind some wood trying to call for fire somehow, some way. and it gets. I think it was an A-10 that finally got on station. It's after 45 minutes of us just shooting, constantly just shooting at each other, and they finally get an A-10 on station, and they gun run the west mountainside that had like one singular building on it. They gun run it, and then they JDAM the building, and fighting continued. They kept shooting, so they dropped another JDAM on the mountainside, and dark started coming, and I think that's what they would have. We were pretty sure that they were going to start funneling troops into the town, but the JDAMs and the gun runs pushed them back to a point where it started getting dark, and they didn't. They sort of put off the attack from there. But
how are you guys on ammo during all this?
Prepared. It was one of the times where we had brought a heavy load of it. Well, this operation and all the working components were fucking insane, because at the end of it, when I went on leave after this whole situation, I heard people talking about Barge Matal at Bagram and talking about how they had to use the Red Wing, which was the helicopter that went all around Afghanistan, or our portion of Afghanistan, to drop people off, pick supplies, having to be a priority use at Barge Matal to resupply them. Like it funneled all the way back to Bagram. It was at a point where we were responsible for 81% of the use of ordnance in Afghanistan at the time. They were funneling ammo and shit to us as a priority so that we could continue the fight. And the fight's still going.
Good. You want to hear that?
I went on leave like 2 or 3 weeks after this whole situation, and it was still going on. They stayed there for 45 days or something.
That's a weird. That's something I'd like to touch on. The fact that since you guys are in country for an hour or a year, almost said an hour. Since you guys are in country for a year, you rate at some point during the deployment like 2 weeks back home, right? Like you get to take that 2-week leave period.
Yeah, you get.
How weird is that to be like fighting, or just being in country, and then all right, get to go. I mean, and you get to go wherever you want too, right? Won't they? They'll buy you a ticket to anywhere you want to go, so you don't even have to go home. You can go on vacation to wherever. 2 weeks.
Ireland, then Jerusalem, and stuff like that.
So 2 weeks, and then you're back in the combat zone. What is that feeling like when you're coming back? When you're like, fuck, I got to go back to this, like...
I want to say it was a week and a half after I went on leave. After our stint in Barge Matal, my squad leader died from that fight, and he was a good dude, and he went back home at the beginning of our deployment to witness the birth of his 2 twin daughters.
Oh, man. That's tough, man.
And yeah, it was one of those things that I came home, and me and my wife at the time weren't doing great as it was, and I just picked up the bottle and said, leave me the fuck alone. Like, it is what
Do you
it
think
is.
it's smart to send people back for 2 weeks and then have them come back into a combat zone like that?
No, not at all. I don't think you should be put with regular people after you've been through stuff like that for an extended period of time. I think you need to see some psychiatrical help that will help you understand what you're doing. It took me a while after I got out of the military to realize that it's 2 different worlds.
Mm-hmm.
It's 3 different worlds. It's combat, it's garrison, and then there's the civilian world. And no, I don't think that anybody should be put back into the regular world. But some people adapt. I myself personally, that's the reason I'm okay with having this conversation, is because I'm okay with telling people that during the Battle of Barge Matal, I dropped a house on 3 dudes. I'm okay with that, but there's a lot of people that can't cope. There's a lot of people that don't have anything to try to take them away from it. Their demons just never left them.
That's one of the pluses to the old like World War II kind of way of getting troops to and from war on ship. It gave them that week or 2 of decompression time where they're only around the people that they were there with to like kind of talk through shit and stuff like that, you know, in that 2-week period before they get home. I know what you're saying. I think you're right. You know, like, I don't know, man. It's you can't really implement a strategy like that though, because a lot of the people that go to Afghanistan don't ever leave like a big base like Bagram or like Bastion, and it's a completely different deployment for someone like that. And that's not me disparaging their service. They, you know, you don't choose if you're going to Bagram or, you know, a FOB out in the middle of nowhere, but it's different for sure.
I remember the moment that I said that sort of, I guess, I don't know, that put me in a really bad place as far as the whole psychiatrical thing. At first, now I'm a huge proponent of it. I'm all for it. But when I came back, the person that they sent us to see to, you know, deal with through, it was pretty much just a revolving door. You walk in, you tell them stuff, and then you walk out. And then from there on, if you had an issue, they'll schedule an appointment with you. But I remember walking in there, and she's looking at the sheet of, you know, stuff that we had done. She said, "So you were with the 132s?" And that was the moment I was like, "You can't even say my unit, right?" I'm good. Everything's fine. I'm done with it, you know. And they let me go. I probably needed psychological help at that point, but it was one of those things where it's like, you don't care about me. You don't care about what we do.
You know, another thing too is a lot of guys won't accept that help because they think it's going to take them away from their dudes and stuff like that. You know,
in some cases it might. I mean, if there's things that you're feeling or something that you can't just get past, you might not be able to. They will take you out. I remember hearing a lot of like Marines were getting fucked because of it, because they went through some fucking intense combat in Sangin, and they came back and told them how they were feeling and what they witnessed, and it was like, you can't go back out. You can't be a Marine like that. And it's one of those things I don't. It's a case by case situation, and they're using a blanket way to try to treat things like that.
Well, it's a lose-lose situation, because if you say, all right, man, you know, we'll let you keep going out. I know you're having mental issues or whatever. I know you've brought it up, but we're going to keep sending you out. You're in the wrong. But if you also say, hey, man, you've seen too much, we're going to pull you back, you're not going out this time, then you're also in the wrong, you know, because some of those dudes, that's like, they want to go do that. They're used to it, you know, and it's a tough spot to be in for what level of mental health, like, how do we take care of this mental health problem? You know what I'm saying? Like, how can you? It's like you said, every person's different. Every person reacts differently. I had one of my guys, and I will say this too, there's this weird stigma I've heard where they're like, commands don't care, or if you tell your command something, then they get you pulled off and you're never going to go. When I got back from my first Afghan deployment, one of my scouts, who had probably one of the roughest deployment, you know, out of my team, you know, I was the fires chief, so I have a fire support team, but they're broken off into their different company fire support teams, and I was at the battalion. One of my scouts, you know, had been blown up on the deployment. He had been shot at multiple times, like they'd been ambushed and all this other stuff. And one day he came into work, man, and he was just really upset. And he's like, hey, Sergeant, you know, I just need to talk to somebody. Like, so I'm just not sleeping and stuff. And this is where, I mean, maybe it's just me, but I immediately was like, all right, dude, let's go talk to the chief. You know, let's go over to medical, and I'm going to sit you down with the chief medical officer, or the, you know, Navy chief, who's in charge of medical, so you can talk to him. 'Cause I'm not the right person. Like, I will sit here and we can discuss the deployment, obviously, but if you're looking for something beyond that, I'm going to take you over here to chief. And I think he talked to him, and maybe he talked to the chaplain or something like that. And nothing ever came of it. You know, like we didn't hold him any kind of, there was no negative impact to him. I don't think he ever deployed again, but that's because he was getting out, you know. But if he wanted to deploy again, I don't think anything that we had done would have stopped that. And I think he just felt like he needed to let some stuff off his chest that he didn't want to talk to us about, which I was totally cool with. And if you're a leader out there and you're not acting in that way, like if someone's asking for help and you're kind of blowing them off, or you're kind of pushing them in a different direction, you're kind of a dick. You know, let the individual decide what kind of help they need. Because a lot of the problems that we have right now with mental health issues, I'll be honest, man, the military has so many programs. Like, there's so many programs for veterans, for active duty military members. There's anonymous sources that you can talk to. There's all these things. And the biggest issue with all of them is that guys just won't take that first step and realize they have a problem and reach out to somebody. It's like people want to hate on the military's mental health readiness or what they've done to help people out after combat. But honestly, a lot of the issues stem from the individual not wanting to go get help, and that might be a tough thing for some people to hear, but that's reality. Like, we have more services set out for the military than any other sector of the population. And a lot of people just won't take advantage to it. Go ahead.
The stigma comes from, before. I mean, you had shell shock and then PTSD and now PTS, and people, when it came to it at the beginning, it was just fucking drink water and suck it up, dude. Fucking move on with your life. And you're right. There are an absurd amount of ways to get mental health checkups, from anonymous to VA supported to civilian, that'll do it for free because you're a service member that went through it. And I know a lot of people that, as you said, don't want to hear it, but it's there. You're just not taking advantage of it. I know dudes that came back. I know quite a few dudes that came back and tried to take care of their issues with drugs, and about 3 or 4 of them OD'd throughout the period of time that we were back at the beginning. And it was like,
that is.
And then I've had friends that have reached out, and you try to help them to the best of your ability, and you try to put them in contact with them, and you check up on them, and it's like, no, I haven't gotten a hold of anybody. I just started smoking meth. It's like,
it's a rough way to start. Jesus. Damn. I will say that you're right. Initially, the VA was really bad about just prescribing dudes drugs. Like, hey, put them on this medication, put them on that medication. And you hear about a lot of people that OD'd, and a lot of times it wasn't because they were abusing it. It was because they were prescribed multiple different medicines that interacted with each other poorly, and it caused them to die and stuff like that. And that shit is fucked up. That is really messed up that even occurred. And I think we're doing a better job now, and I think the military is becoming more open to more holistic approaches to some things. And I think a good thing is that veterans are seeing the results of, one thing I'll say is the opioid crisis in America has been horrible. I've known multiple people back home in Indiana that have OD'd and died, from heroin and shit like that. And I think that has opened people's eyes to the reality that maybe I shouldn't just take prescription drugs just because someone prescribed it to me. You know what I'm saying? Like, just because it's prescribed to me, should I really be taking this? And I've always, I don't know what it was. I don't know if it's because I had uncles that were drug addicts and stuff like that. But growing up, I did not like to take anything. I don't even like to take Tylenol. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
I'm just not into that. I smoke weed all the time. That's what I do. But I know that's not going to kill me. Like, if I OD or take like a couple Xanax and get all fucked up and stuff like that. And I've just seen so many people get addicted to stuff. I don't know. I think the American population as a whole has kind of seen, like, maybe prescription drugs aren't the way, and we're starting to branch out to these more holistic ways of, like, helping ourselves and helping our own,
Well, when I got out of the military, I was really like, I don't understand the need for marijuana, and I was completely, Reagan era fuck drug type situation, and as time's gone on, and I hooked up with a lady who uses marijuana as an actual, like, a medical use. If she doesn't smoke, if she can smoke, and it'll prevent certain things that she has going on with, like, headaches and migraines and stuff like that. And she could smoke when she has a migraine and fuck herself up completely and just ruin her whole day. But it's one of those things where it's taken time for me to realize that it has a purpose, and there's more to it than just being prescribed a bunch of shit that's going to possibly help you, but more than likely be a detriment to your life, and you'll probably have to continue to take because now it's supporting the way you live, and if you don't take it,
you want to walk around and be a pilled out zombie, Like, what kind of life is that?
I'm on the same page though. Like, if I get prescribed a pain, if I had a root canal recently, like 2 or 3 years ago, and they prescribed me pain meds, and I didn't take the pain meds until it was to a point where Tylenol wasn't doing it, and I was like, I'm gonna take one of these, and then that should do it. And I'm the same way. I don't like taking things unless I absolutely fucking have to. Especially when you see people that are like, my leg hurts, I'm gonna take some ibuprofen. And then later on the day, I'm gonna take some more ibuprofen. It's like, no, just deal with it. I think it has to do with people's pain tolerance too.
For sure. Yeah, I'm the same way. Like in boot camp, I had all 4 of my wisdom teeth taken out in boot camp, so that was cool. And I think they gave me 2 painkillers. There was like 2 pills. I don't remember what they were, but they were a narcotic. I don't remember what it was. And I took one that day, and the other one I didn't take, and I had it at my Foot Locker, and I didn't need it. I didn't really need it. And then after the Crucible, after our like last training exercise at boot camp, after getting fucked up for like 2 days or whatever it was, I went and I ate that thing and then came back and passed out. Because after the Crucible, you come back, you get your Warriors breakfast, and then they let you sleep, kind of recover a little bit. And I just ate that pill, went just out, and I was like, that's the time that I needed something like that. So I was glad I saved it. But yeah, I'm not really into the whole pill thing at all. But man, so what were your strategies though? What do you think helped you the most dealing with something like that?
I'm not gonna lie, man. I fucked up real hard. Like I just boozed, and then I got out, and it was occasional cocaine and maybe some marijuana, but it was never. I never coped. I didn't have a good time coping at first because I left the military, so I lost that connect, and I figured I would just deploy for the rest of my life, and that would be my life, and that was taken away. And it was one of those, like, I don't know. I didn't do good at first, but I realized that, again, there's different sides to everything. The civilian world, people are stupid, but there are smart people and there are good people, and not everybody's a complete retard. It's just, I don't know. I know a lot of people that, like the dudes that smoked pot before we went on the deployment to Kunar Valley or Kunar province. They were like, I'm not going back to Afghanistan, so I'm just gonna fucking smoke and get kicked out. I never had an issue like that. I never at any point during my career was like, I want to get out of here. Even during the worst of it, during people dying or me getting shot at or getting blown up or starving at certain times when we didn't have enough food and we had to distribute MREs to the folks because we decided to drag them around. It was just, I don't know. I deal with it differently, more so than a lot of people. I know a lot of dudes that went through a lot of shit through all their deployments through their entire military career, and you can't, for the love of God, try to get anything out of them. And unless you're with them, like myself personally, if I try to probe, they might give me something, but they're closed up tight and they refuse to put anything out. Where in my case, if someone I know asks me something about the military or they want to know my experience, I'm more than willing. I'm an open book. I'm not going to try to cover anything up, and I'm not going to be bashful about the situation. It is what it is. It's something that I went through, and it's something that I feel that I have knowledge about, and I might be able to give you a little bit more input on. But I'm sure you know a lot of people that just refuse to talk about any of it. They refuse to bring it up.
I've invited multiple people I know that have done, wild stuff to come on the podcast and talk about it. And I don't pressure anyone for this. I want people to tell their own story when they're ready, kind of deal. And there's a lot of people that just don't want to talk about it. They're like, you know what, man? Only the people that were there deserve to know the story. And I'm like, okay, I get that perspective. I completely get it. I'm on the thinking of, I wish more people would tell their story because the American population has like basically zero buy-in to any military operations that are happening. There's no draft, so it's not like they're being affected by wars and stuff like that. So I think the guys that actually went over and served, no matter what you did, should be more open to talk about what the military is actually like, because I also think there's this bad, and podcasts like this probably don't help, but there's this stigma that everyone that's been in the military has been in combat and been in these crazy situations, when that's really not the case at all. Well,
so to sort of segue in back to the deployment, this whole Barge Matal situation that came out of it was because of the election, and we were there not to push the Taliban out, but to give the people sense somewhere that they can vote. It's just the valley in general. Yeah, sense of security that they can vote, right? But a lot of my deployment, and it is what it is, was fucking sitting inside a porta-john, cranking it to Gianna
That's
Michaels.
funny.
You know?
There's a lot of boredom on
or
deployment. People don't realize the level of boredom.
Doing vehicle layouts sucked ass. It was just it was just so like monotonous at sometimes. But then you get into a fight and you're like, yeah, let's fucking do this whole thing.
Getting into a fight is cool at first, but after a while,
right.
you're like, dude, fuck this. Like, I'm done. You know, I had a friend, I think I might have talked about this on the podcast before, but I remember being in Afghanistan in Sangin, and my buddy, we were all mechanics together. You know, I was a motor team mechanic when I first came in, and he never really got out of that world. He is now, but every time he tried to change jobs or do something like that, it was just like one block in front of, you know, he never got out of that world. And I remember being in Afghanistan, and he emailed me, and he's like, man, he's like, now, because one of our other buddies had left and gone over to like recon battalion and all this other stuff. And he's like, everyone that we know has a combat action ribbon now but me. And I'm like, bro, I almost got shot in the face the other day. Like, fuck a combat action ribbon. Like, it's not worth it, man. Like, you're asking to come out here and get into a fight, and then like when you see the reality of it, like I said, it gets pretty old real quick, especially when you have a couple close calls. You're like, man, what the fuck? What am I doing? You know, like, is this worth it? So
let me.
We're at 2.5. We can go for a little longer if you want.
Okay. So, just to touch back on the deployment. So, Barge Matal lasts for 10 days for us, but it lasted our battalion 45 days, and they cycled out every single platoon, and I think one platoon from every company after every single platoon out of our company back in there. And for our 10 days, it was a fight every day. We had the initial attack, and then every day we would take sporadic gunfire or turn into a full-blown fight. I remember one night we had 5 or 6 saws online facing down the valley, and they waited for me to initiate with a javelin. This is the middle of the night. I initiate with these dudes that are sitting out there with the javelin, and 5 saws just start ringing out with lasers, night vision, the whole fucking shebang, tracers going out in one direction. It was the craziest thing I've ever seen. Javelin initiates, impacts, they're fucking lighting it up. That was one night. The first night after the initial attack, where the supply chain, the reason I brought that up is because they kept supplying the shit out of us. Like, that night after the attack, they already had Chinooks loaded up with all the equipment that we would need to resupply and 50 cows that we were going to put into position, the whole shebang. Of course, we didn't find a truck, so we had to ruck our shit back up, get up there at like 2 or 3 at night, come back down when the helicopters dropped off all the equipment, then hand carry all the equipment back up from the LZ. I didn't know that small Ds came in like tubes that are 15 times bigger than them, and then you have to pull them out. It was crazy. But we keep getting resupplied. That night, while we're sleeping, we're hearing explosions in the mountainside, and this is the first time I've ever had one on station or ever seen one in use, and it's the AC-130 just fucking shit up. They spot targets, they're engaging. Again, this wasn't like a typical operation where you were requesting permission for anything. They were just fucking shit up. You saw it, you called it, they blew it up.
Those are a quick response too.
JTACs. Yep, the JTACs were taking turns on the horn as far as calling out contacts and making sure that they were getting PID on everything and that they weren't engaging friendlies. But for those 10 days, it was just a constant fight. My squad leader had died. My platoon leader had taken shrapnel. He came back to us and then eventually told us that our squad leader had died. And then we pulled out of Barge Matal. I don't think we went there for anything. I don't think it changed any fucking thing. We killed a bunch of people. By the end of our time there, we had tallied 121 people killed after 10 days that we had helped. We're pretty sure the CIA went in there because we had a dude in all tiger stripe, like Vietnam tiger stripe, with a cool guy chest rack and sunglasses and a baseball hat with these ANA commando type dudes. And he told us there's a place down there called Pop Rock. If your guys see anything coming from that direction, don't engage. It could be us coming down the MSR. And that night we heard helicopters further down the valley, a lot of gunfire. No one made it back down our way. But they said they had killed a couple of high HVTs in the vicinity. But after all that, pull out of Barge Matal and go on leave for 2 weeks back to El Paso, Texas. Get fucked up the entire time. Spend a lot of my fucking savings. And then come back to Afghanistan. When I come back, the day that I come back to Afghanistan 2 weeks later, I'm getting off the helicopter, and I look over and I see a Black Hawk with a bunch of cool-looking dudes with dual-tube night vision, fucking wearing dark uniforms, not ACU, and one of them had a PJ patch on his arm, and the other ones they all just looked bearded and ready to fuck shit up.
They're bringing in the hitters.
That's interesting. Yeah, like all right. So I go back to the hooch, and as I'm rolling up to the hooch, my platoon's coming in. They're fucking cussing and angry and pissed off beyond recognition. I'm like, what's going on? And later on, I found out that a 5-man Marine ETT team had gone into the valley with a platoon of A&A. No idea why. I just knew that they went in there, and that they had gotten overrun. And right now, the SF team that I had just seen is going in to recover bodies. And my platoon sat, like I said on the last podcast, sat at the mouth of the valley for like 6 or 7 hours. Finally, at the end of it, hearing the calls for help and not getting the word to go in. I did a little bit more research on it, and the dude that was in charge wasn't the battalion commander, our battalion commander. So he didn't want to lose his job because he made the wrong call and sent us in, or called for fire in the middle of the town. It was a fucked up situation to come back to.
Yeah, no shit.
After dealing with Barge Matal and the squad leader, then going on leave and sort of blowing off steam and getting back to normalcy for the most part, and then coming back to find out that a valley that we had gone in 3 times, we've gone in a couple times, and the most recent 3 we had gotten shot at and almost blown up by IEDs, and they decided to send in a 4-man. Whoever decided to send in a 4-man element or 5-man element of Americans with A&A that weren't battle proven yet is just beyond me. But it is what it is, and every Dakota's book on the situation obviously is one-sided and his view, but a lot of what he preached in it is definitely pretty much what happened. They refused to call for fire. They couldn't get any sort of air support on station. I mean, Dakota was a scout sniper. He could have been calling fire the entire time.
I don't think he was a scout
But
sniper. Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't even know that.
He was.
I thought he was a machine gunner.
Is that what it is?
But machine gunners become snipers, so that could be where I'm confused.
He was on a 50. So we had ETTs with us in Barge, and they were both from Tennessee. One was an E7, the other was a captain, a gunny for you guys. And these dudes were cool as fuck. They were like the most down to earth fucking leadership role type dudes that were leading these AMP guys. I think they were both infantry. I don't know what they were, but they were embedded training team with us, and they were cool as fuck. And they would go out in austere conditions with these AMP dudes and do the same thing that Dakota did. And both of them were ranger tabbed and like ready to fuck shit up. Dakota with the ETT team, since he was the lowest man on the totem pole. I mean, he was
a sergeant,
an E5, and everybody else was higher rank. He was the only dude that was qualified to be the machine gun guy, and I think that's what happened. That's the reason he was on the 50 the whole time.
Yeah, the advisor teams kind of, they kind of put you where you're best suited, and they tried to get me to be a driver for a little bit. I'm like, dude, I can't be the JTAC and a driver. Like, what are you talking about? Like, how am I supposed to reach the radios on the other side that I can't even see and try to, like, I was like, that makes 0 sense. Let's not do that, you know?
I think that's the reason he fell into that position. But his story was fucked up because he made it out of all of that, and his friends had died, and he came back to the fob that he was at, and they had shot the dog that he had been taking care of. That it was like the crescendo to like, fuck you.
Yeah, I haven't read it. I read his book like years ago, so I don't remember the details like that. But yeah, dude, it's a tough. the Medal of Honor is a tough. That's not. I think it's pretty well known that to receive that award is to be reminded about probably your worst day of your life, and then be constantly reminded it for the rest of your life.
Captain Swatson that was there too, man. That dude was a fucking bad motherfucker. I remember we linked up with him at the beginning of the deployment. He had long, shaggy hair. He wasn't wearing a fucking vest. He was just driving around in a Ranger with his M4 up front shotgun. And he was just like, "What's up?" You know, he was just a cool dude. And the fact that those two gentlemen survived that and went through what they did is fucking insane. But so Ganjgal goes off after leave, and soon after, I went on leave in August, so September, October. I think it was October is when it happened. Yeah, October 9th. October 9th? October 9th is when COP Keating got overrun. And we were sitting on the fob, and we get the word just like the Korengal, except now it's be light, we need to maneuver quickly. So we load up our rucksacks on Chinooks. No, on Blackhawks. Blackhawks come in, pick us up, and take us to, what the hell was it? OP Fritchie, which was overlooking COP Keating. They drop us off at OP Fritchie in the midst of COP Keating being overrun. So we're right above them as the fight's going on below us. And I remember walking down the side of the fucking mountain going to COP Keating and them telling us to stop because they were going to walk mortars in front of us so that we had a clear path to make sure nothing was there. So we're sitting there, the explosions happen, and A-10 comes out and does a gun run. Air was finally on station. We push past the linear danger area that the mortars had dropped on, and then I hear, "Stop! Don't move!" And then I hear a pistol going on. Real distinct, a pistol, because it was, it made a different sound. And I'm like, oh, okay. So no one did anything. We heard people shoot. People were yelling. Platoon leaders like, "Barnes, where is he?" Then more shooting. Then it stops. Like, okay. So we keep moving, and I remember looking over at this tree with like a hole inside of it, and there was a body inside of it laying down face first. And one of our squad leaders was picking up the other body that was there, sort of, like making sure that he wasn't booby trapped or anything like that, grabbing the AK and dumping the mag and throwing it, and being like, what the fuck happened there? Later I found out that one of our machine gunners, one of our 240 dudes, grabbed his M9 out, saw the dude moving, and was just yelling as he's doing the motions, "There's a guy moving, he's in front of me, bang, bang, bang," type situation, and just fucking smokes. He shoots the dead body that's on the ground and then smokes the guy that was next to him that was getting ready to pull up his AK. They had both been fucked up by the 81s already.
That's crazy. He got him with a pistol.
I want to say the first M9 kill in country. Our entire
That's crazy,
man. Like he fucking pulls it out.
Good on him,
dude. Later on, the scouts behind us, or not the scouts, but a platoon of dudes behind us. One of the guys actually notched out one of his rounds out of the butt of the AK and handed it to him.
That's cool.
Now he has it on a necklace. But we get to COP Keating, and it is a fucking. We get to the switchbacks overlooking COP Keating, and they're like, "This is where they would have attacked if they were attacking." So we walk down, we cross the barbed wire that's surrounding the COP. Step on it, step over it. We're walking in, and I trip, and I look down, and I see a foot. Like, okay. And I had a Surefire on my rifle, and I aim it down, and I turn the flashlight on, and I see that it's an American foot. And I'm like, are we going to police this dude's body, or what the fuck's going on? And someone behind me says, "There's still possibly enemy in the wire. Turn off your fucking flashlight." Like, okay. So I turn off my flashlight, and I look down, and there's one of the dudes that had tried to get out of the Humvee, booked it out, and got shot, gunned down as he was running out of it. So we were going into COP Keating. There was a dead Taliban dude that was on the ground. He had been shot in the chest, and he had an RPG in one hand and a rocket in the other, and he was on the ground dead. I remember that. And we walked over him, cleared out the weapons. We got about midway through the outpost, and we hear grenades going off over the wall, and the dudes that were the fourth ID dudes that were there were pulling the pins on grenades, reaching their hand outside the ESCO and dropping the grenades because they were afraid there were still dudes trying to fucking breach the perimeter as we're going through.
This had to be super
So
surreal moment.
The way I'm describing it is not doing it fucking justice. Things are on fire. There's the Latvian ETT's hooch, which I think was like a 2-story building, is on fire. We trip over an American soldier that's dead on the ground. We walk over a fucking Taliban dude. It was one of those things where it's hard to believe. I was lucky in the sense that I was part of weapons squad, and the weapons squad had to stay centralized because of the machine guns. So they put us in this, what was the ANA hooch at one point in time. And we get the machine guns situated, and they start calling for volunteers to go find bodies. So they take a squad of ours, and they start scouring the outpost for soldiers, for Taliban. They were still expecting there to be a fight. I don't know why, but they were still expecting something to happen. Everybody was on their fucking tiptoes. I remember not really sleeping that night. We got there at about 9 or 8 at night, and the sun had gone down, and I pulled security in the middle of the night, and I remember getting up to the guard position with a machine gun and looking, and you know how you have, a roof, and you can look up, and you can probably see, a pretty decent space in front of you. The way the mountains were oriented, you would look up and you would just see mountain, and you would have to get underneath it to see above the fucking mountain. And it was one of those situations like if you were to put your machine gun aiming at an angle like this, aiming at the sky, you might be able to hit the top of it. But it was all over. It was a punch bowl. It was like Barge Matal. We just had mountains everywhere, and there was no elevation that we could get on that would do us any good. And I remember, and I'll never forget the radio call for 9 heroes aboard, or no, it was 8 heroes aboard, 1 wounded, and they pulled that Black Hawk out. It was a somber moment hearing that 8 of our dudes had died, and 1 more was critically. He died eventually. He died on the bird back to the FOB, but it's surreal to think that we were that close to the fight and there was nothing we could do. We were above them coming down. It took us forever to fucking get to him finally, and when we did, it was over. There was nothing we could do. It was just like Bari Alai. It was just like Ganjgal. It was just too little, too late to the party type situation. But out of that, Clint Romachet got the Medal of Honor for doing his squad leading stuff. We stayed there for 3 days. Rigged everything to blow up, blew everything up. I don't think it actually blew up. I think they set it and it never blew, and then they JDAM'd the fuck out of it with a B1. But those are all of the most critical moments of the deployment. The rest of the deployment went on. Nothing too crazy. Started to get cold, and Taliban went back into their holes. I turned 21 December 13th in Afghanistan, so my first, up until January 15th, we're all sober. And then we get to the Ramstein airport after we rip out, and we had a layover, and our battalion commander's like, if you're 21, you can have 2 drinks. And I got fucking shit-faced. I remember my new squad leader didn't drink, so he's like, here, Dom, you turned 21 in Afghanistan.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So,
that was, yeah.
We'll wrap this up, but I want to ask, with all this that you've seen and done, would you still do it? Would you do it again?
I wanted to go SF, man. I would 1,000,000 times do it again. It was.
Can you explain that? Like, because a normal person is like, what the fuck? Like, how could you say you would go through all that again?
I'm not turned off. I'm different when it comes to this, more so than a lot of people. My squad leader died in a town called Barge Matal with his 2 twin daughters at home. that had just been born at the beginning of the year. And I know that he died pissed off, obviously because of his kids, but because he got hit before he could fucking get into a fight with the bad guys. He died before he was able to fucking grab his rifle and start putting rounds down range.
Mm-hmm.
He got hit at the beginning. And that's sort of what I've lived my life by when I was in, and the way I still do is I'm not going to be someone that's going to go lying down. I want to be in the fight, and I'm going to be angry if I die without putting in some sort of effort to fight back. And that's what it is. On top of that, you have the camaraderie of dudes that were there that were like brothers and family, and that you would be willing to lay your life down, and they would be willing to lay their life down faster than you could blink in situations that no one should ever be in, but
Mm-hmm.
you appreciated them. You don't want to not be there. I don't know. There's everybody, different folks, different strokes. Everybody's got their own view on it. Like,
You know, the majority of the people that I would ask that question to, though, will tell me that they would do it again. And I think it's just that mentality of the person that joins the military. And I think being a part of that world, you understand those losses differently than the people that are on the outside looking in. And then they, like you said, the camaraderie, you just can't match that camaraderie. You know, I've yet to see an organization or a group or anything that it has its people as well meshed and like lifelong friendships that come from military service, you know? Like you see fraternities and stuff like that where they're like, hey, brother, you know, like they're all super close and stuff, but it's in no match for like being in the military, especially in a unit that's seen combat.
It's on one of your episodes recently, what was the most recent, Veterans Day or Memorial Day? Veterans Day. I did what you recommended, and I called 22 people that I haven't talked to in a while, and it was good times. There was not a single one of them that made it out, or people have had issues, but a lot of us have, pushed through it, and it was great to talk to them about. We didn't talk about our deployment once. We didn't bring it up at all. It was just life, and it was like we had stopped talking yesterday, and we just picked up the conversation where it was at. It was nice. It was nice to talk to dudes that have been through what I've been through and have an understanding.
100%, man. I think that's probably a good spot to call it then. And on that, continue to recommend, hey, if you want to go do 22 push-ups for 22 suicides a day or whatever and post it on social media and bring awareness that way, go for it. But I think it'd be more effective if you spend 22 days calling an individual and saying what's up or shooting a text or an email and, reaching out to those people and re-spark those conversations. I know exactly what you're talking about. You have those conversations, you update each other on people that you know mutually and talk about some of the funny stuff you remember,
Two of the dudes that I was with, I left Fort Drum, and they had sort of some bad blood by the time they had both gotten out. Because of that call that I made, they got back into contact, because it was like, I talked to this person, and he was wondering how you were doing, and I said you were doing all right, but I wanted to give him, a more in-depth, because I know you guys aren't really on speaking terms. And he said, you know what, what's his number? And then the next day they hit me up and let me know that they were still, that they
I've tried to not hold grudges from my time in the military against people I didn't like. You know what I'm saying? Like, because just because you were a shitty Marine or something like that doesn't mean you're a shitty person, and we're in a different world now, and there's no reason for me to be mad at someone that couldn't do a call for fire correctly or something like that. You know what I'm saying? As long as you're being a good person and you're just being a positive, you're having a positive impact on society, especially nowadays with how fucked up everything is. Like if you're listening to this and you're holding a grudge against someone, maybe they deserve it. Maybe they earned that grudge that you're holding. But I would consider the I would consider the circumstances and how your life has changed, how their life has changed, and maybe get over that grudge and, reach out. Because
Yep.
what I don't like to see is that maybe someone was a shitty Marine, but that doesn't mean someone shouldn't care about them. That doesn't mean someone shouldn't reach out to them, because they're having issues too, probably. Everyone has that kind of separation syndrome, like when you get out of the military, and they deserve to have someone contact them as well, And that's a weird take, I guess. I don't know if it's weird, but
no, it's not. Especially if you've been in combat with people, it's one of those things where you can put aside your differences. If you know that they've been through something traumatic, it probably, if they survived that experience, it probably changed them for the better, or maybe it didn't. I don't know. Everybody I've dealt with has been definitely changed for the better with all the experiences that we went through when it came to the traumatic stuff. But yeah,
for sure, man. Well, hey, thanks again for coming on, man, and just telling your story. It's been touched on a lot of pretty large events, like well-known events that you like you said, unfortunately, were involved in a lot of times on the back end when it was too late to have an impact. But just having been a witness to history, you know what I'm saying? Like, you're going to watch The Outpost and read The Outpost and understand those books and movies differently than someone like me, because you've walked that ground, you've seen those places. And
when it came to COP Keating and Bostic, everything that was in Nuristan, reading the book The Outpost definitely opened my eyes that there were a lot of fucking people that died in that place, because everything that's named out there are people that died. And in the book, you get a description as to what happened with them. But I definitely recommend reading that, The Outpost.
All right, man. Well, have a good week. I think I'll touch bases with you. Maybe we'll have to have you come on and see if we got any questions from the audience for Army guys. Have you come on and talk through some of that. But if there's anything else you want to shout out for anyone or anything like that, feel free.
Invader Girl again, man. I sent you that picture. She does awesome work. That's about it.
Yeah. All right. Well, for everyone else, as always, you can check out my Instagram. It's at Former Action Guys and at J Kramer Graphics both. I just hit. I think he hung up before I finished. That's all right. I just hit 11,000 followers on my J Kramer Graphics Instagram, so I appreciate everyone out there that's been supporting the page. And enjoy the next episode, I guess.